Ladies and gentlemen, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Blinkist. Now, you may ask yourself, what is Blinkist? Well, what it is a platform for anyone who cares about learning, but they worry that they don't have a lot of free time. Blinkist takes the key ideas and insights from over 4,000 nonfiction bestsellers in more than 27 categories, and it gathers them together in 15-minute text and audio explainers that help you understand more about the core ideas. I personally like to think about this as the Cliff Notes for things that I want to dive into a little bit deeper, but I worry I don't have the time. I enjoy Blinkist and generally use it when I am commuting back and forth to where I live. I live about 40 minutes outside of town, and in addition to having a beautiful scenic drive, both there and back, I got some free time, some windshield time. Often I will not listen to anything because I got to work through my own thoughts. But when I'm interested in a topic or I want to dive deeper, my go-to is Blinkist. My most recent book that I used Blinkist to get the Cliff Notes for, Sapiens, which is a pretty fascinating book about humankind. And, well, I just gave away the subtext. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Check it out. That's the one that I just most recently, used the app to listen to. If you're interested, if it sounds like something that you could use to optimize your efficiency, time, and knowledge, right now Blinkist has a special offer just for the audience. Go to Blinkist.com, and I'm going to spell that one time, BLINKIST.com/clearedhot to start your free 7-day trial, and you're going to get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, BLINKIST.com/clearedhot to get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/clearedhot. Check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Feels, which is a product that's had a pretty profound impact in my life. There are plenty of people out there who struggle with anxiety or chronic pain or have trouble sleeping at least once a week. I don't have anxiety too much, but I'd say definitely chronic pain and trouble sleeping. So if you hear those things, don't worry. You're not alone. A lot of people, to include myself, struggle with that sometimes. How does Feels fit into this, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. Feels is a premium CBD delivered directly to your doorstep. It naturally helps reduce stress, anxiety, pain, and oftentimes for people, and this is to include myself, sleeplessness. I pursued CBD, and specifically with this CBD, we're talking sublingual, underneath your tongue. I pursued it as an alternate to over-the-counter medications. Talked about this quite a bit on the podcast. I am not a fan of taking pills, and not to say I'm not talking negatively about the military or military medicine when I say this, but in my old occupation, it wasn't uncommon to be handed a Ziploc bag. And when I say that, I mean an actual Ziploc bag full of 800 milligram Motrin or fill in the blank, whatever else you may have been looking for. I didn't have great experiences with that, and it left a mark, so I try to avoid it. I pursued CBD to deal with body aches and pain. And it actually, in addition to those things, I was very surprised to find out that it definitely helped me with sleeplessness and actually stress. So I personally get those two benefits. It's very easy to take. Feels, you take a few drops, put it under your tongue, and you can feel the difference within a few minutes. It's no joke. It's very rapid with how fast it will impact your body. The thing to remember about CBD is that finding the right dose is important, and everybody's dose is different. So leave a little bit of room to experiment over the course of a week or so. You may need to take more or less to get the effects that you're after. As an example, for me, when I want a lot of help with sleep, I'll take more than I normally would for dealing with just daily aches and pains. If you're new to CBD, one of the cool things about Feels is they offer a free CBD hotline and text message support to help guide you through this experience. It works naturally to help you feel better. There is no high, hangover, or addiction. That's probably the most common question I get. This is not a psychotropic. It's not going to make you piss hot on a piss test, and if you take some to help you sleep at night, you're not going to wake up feeling foggy. Matter of fact, I feel the opposite when I take it. Feels definitely has me feeling my best every day, and it can help you too. Another cool thing, they have a membership. You can join the Feels community and get Feels delivered to your door every month. You're going to save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel it at any time. Become a member today by going to feels.com/clearedhot, and you are going to get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That is feals.com/clearedhot to become a member and get 50% off automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Feels.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. It's almost 2021. The time for unmanaged, unkempt growth below the waist, it's a thing of the past. It is time to gear up and get yourself the gift of shaving this holiday season. And this is a gift that you can give to other people. I'm talking about the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Manscaped has redesigned the electro trimmer. Their lawnmower 3.0 has proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. So this trimmer reduces cuts on your nuts. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. The Lawnmower 3.0 comes inside their brand new Perfect Package 3.0, which makes for the perfect gift this holiday season. It's literally everything you need to keep trim cut-free and smelling lovely. Also in the Perfect Package 3.0, Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits, I hope, you savages. Why would you not put deodorant on the smelliest part of your body? So there's the Crop Preserver, but they also have a Crop Reviver. This product, along with the Crop Preserver, keeps your balls from sweating, smelling, or sticking, or just being gross in general. These products, they all smell good. Their manly scent is attractive and will help you set the mood, if you know what I'm talking about. The Perfect Package will also come with a pair of Manscaped boxers that'll keep your junk feeling fresh all day. It is time to upgrade those overused pair of boxers to the Manscaped High Performance Anti-Chafing Boxer. So stuff your own stocking and get yourself or your dad or your brother-in-law, fill in the blank, the best gift of all, the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping with the code ClearedHot at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. 20% off and free shipping with the code ClearedHot, all one word, at manscaped.com. That is 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and using the code ClearedHot. Clean up your nuts and make sure you stay on Santa's nice side of the list. And lastly today, this episode is brought to you by everyone's favorite sponsor, Blue Chew. Now, we just talked about keeping the family jewels nice and tidy, cleaning the hedges around the house to make the house look better. And let's be honest, there's nothing that pairs better with all of that prep work than a dick that's harder than Mandarin Chinese. Now, you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up. BlueChew.com. That's right, blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. You can take this thing anytime, day or night. I don't know what you're into. Maybe you're a night owl. Maybe you're a morning owl, if that's a thing. You can take it on a full stomach or an empty stomach, so that way you can be ready whenever the opportunity arises. It's made in the USA. It's prescribed online by licensed physicians, so you don't have to go to the doctor or wait in a line of any kind. It's even cheaper than a pharmacy, and they prepare and ship it right to you in a discreet package. There's nothing to be awkward or concerned about, and you don't need to leave your house. So if you could benefit from a little assist, or maybe a little bit more confidence where it counts, Blue Chew is the fast and easy way to get that accomplished. Right now, special deal for the listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use the special code ClearedHot. You're just going to pay $5 in shipping. Again, that's Blue Chew, BLUE, chew.com. Promo code ClearedHot to try it for free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper choice. And Can't thank them enough for sponsoring the podcast. Promo code ClearedHot at BlueChew.com. Unwrap an axe handle this holiday season. You know what I'm talking about? Get some. And that's it on the business side of the house. Let's talk today about my guest, Steve Weatherford. Damn, this man is fascinating, and he is inspirational in so many different ways. We met through the power of the internet. He nominated me, and I forget the exact program it was for, but I think it might have been in like a men's health thing back in 2015, the year that I did the wingsuit jump to benefit the Navy SEAL Foundation. And I saw it when he tagged me on Twitter, and I responded to him and said thank you, and we started communicating, and eventually one day we met face-to-face. Of course, what did we do the first time we met? I took him skydiving. We did a little bit of wind tunnel, and then we jumped out of an airplane and have stayed in contact since. And like I said, inspirational human being. Played for years in the NFL. He's a punter. He can kick the shit out of a ball. But he's also a family man, an entrepreneur. He's writing a book. He is all about pushing himself and exploring things for personal growth. He's an amazing human being. And he happens to have a business partner that lives damn near in the same town that I do. So he happened to be in the area. And of course, I'm going to grab him up. Episode number 158 with Steve Weatherford. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
All right, well, you still live in Cali, so I don't even know if it's safe for us to talk about your ARs.
Well, hey, for the time, I got a bolt action. I'm a total nerd though, man. Like you guys are the coolest people ever to me, because once I started to like actually get a check that had commas in it when I got into the NFL, because I'm from Indiana, is as soon as Barack Obama was about to get elected and he was talking about assault rifles and all this other stuff, I went out and bought like 3 Colt. I took one of my game checks and spent the entire game check on guns that I thought were going to be illegal, and now I'm stuck with like six AR-15s that are set up ACOG style and only have one son. So I got to teach my daughters how to get it done.
You're not the only person who went down that path. There's a lot of people.
I think I'm probably speaking to quite a few of them right now.
There is a rifle manufacturer that I've started working with, and I think in the future something will come to be for like a partnership. But they were talking about multi-tens of millions of dollars of back orders right now for the same reason that
right now because of
that you're talking
Biden.
about. Well,
okay.
and I get a little iffy when it comes to social media because people will repost like tweets and stuff, but I also know how to use Photoshop.
Right.
You know, so I could do the bubble and make it read whatever you want. And I am pretty sure though he essentially came out and said he was going to go directly after assault rifles, which is an interesting term because what is an assault rifle?
I'm asking you, man. I just barely know how to use them. I have a gun case full of them, and I'm not kidding you, Andy. I watch YouTube videos to figure out how to disassemble them.
That's not uncommon, actually, for gun owners because most guns don't come with a manual that talks about how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to put it back together. Maintenance, storage is another big one that most gun owners miss. Mm-hmm. The last stat I read was 50% of gun owners don't have a safe.
Why do you think people like you are so valuable, though? You know, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that would create.
I don't get into that space though. I actually avoid it.
You're still very valuable to people, like to your friends. I'm not saying necessarily just on social media, but if I've got questions about guns,
oh yeah, hit me up.
You would definitely be one of the people where I'd be like, hey, so what do you think about this? I've got like Ryan Mickler's not a guy that has as much experience as you, but a whole lot more experience than me.
He knows his way around things that go bang.
Right. Yeah. I mean, here's the deal, dude. I grew up in Indiana, so I grew up around guns, but I didn't grow up around AR-15s. I grew up around shotguns, and I don't think my dad ever had a handgun.
See, I didn't really grow up around guns. I didn't really. My dad would hunt. We actually lived south of here in Missoula when I was much younger. So
you're from up here?
Not really. I'm born and raised in Santa Cruz. My dad, there's deep military ties in my family. Navy on my dad's side, Army on my mom's side. My mom did not serve. My dad did in the Navy. My dad's dad, my dad's dad's dad, all Navy, surprisingly enough. And my dad was on the first squadron of patrol boats in Vietnam and had some lingering effects from it, for sure. To the point where my mom was basically saying to him, you will either figure this out or you're going to be navigating life by yourself. So we came to Missoula, I believe in large part because he found a Veterans Association counseling group. And I know they were getting deep into some stuff you actually probably would like deep sweat lodge type stuff, like physically, mentally taxing. Yeah. So we lived, I barely remember it. I mean, I think we were maybe like 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I remember there was snow and getting in trouble for throwing snowballs at cars and running. And that was the reason we moved there. But the rest of my time was Santa Cruz, California. So he had rifles, and I remember hunting with him one time, and I saw a pistol a few times. But the opposite experience of you, like I was not around guns all the time when I was growing up. I got that education later.
How did you, like at 11, know that you wanted to be a Navy SEAL? I'm sure that's a question a lot of people have asked you, but
one of the most common, and so obviously because I get that question often, I'll think about it. I have no good answer for that. Yeah. It's an uncommon narrative for people. They'll often say, well, how did you know that? How could that possibly be? And then, we had these big cage areas, like buildings that were rectangles like this, and it was just row after row after row of cages, and you'd put all of your issued gear in there, and it's basically chain link fence that separated them, so you could sit there and just talk down the cage area, and you'd hear people talking about it. It was the single most common narrative of the people that I served with. At a super early age, they hear about it, they read a book about it, and boom, they're off and running.
Was it the eliteness of it that attracted you, or was
it had to have been a part of it?
Or
I didn't know about. I was too young at 11 to understand the alpha portion. Right. I do believe, looking back, that there was some level of the exclusivity, some level of the fact that the odds were stacked against me. Because even then, pre 9/11, we're talking in the 80s now. When I was researching it, the attrition rate was what the attrition rate was. It has moved around a little bit, like a tick higher here and a tick lower there, but it sits on average at 75 to 80% of students who attempt it don't make it through.
Right.
From when they started the program until 2020. There was an essence of that was intriguing to me, and that's probably atypical for a lot of people too. Like to me, when people say, hey, you probably can't do this, I was like,
right.
Why don't you just hold on a second?
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to give this a shot. So it was all those things. And as a young man, most young men want to be, but we play Army. I don't think it's that uncommon,
How do you, I feel like I'm interviewing you, but I'm very interested, man. You know what I mean?
Interview away. We'll go back and forth.
Yeah. Is for you, when you were coming up and you decided that was your goal. For me, when I was about 12 years old, I decided I wanted to be a pro athlete. I've watched the movie Pistol Pete 1,000 times.
Did you know football specifically, or you just
I didn't even touch a football until I was 14. And so that was kind of my point to saying this is, I knew I wanted to be a professional athlete, but I think every little boy thinks that. And so the question I have for you is, how did you stay so resolute to that? Because a lot of people say like, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL, but then they don't take the action required to put themselves in the percentage chance of that happening. And the best thing you could have done, I guess, at 11 would have joined that junior high Naval Academy type of thing.
Which they didn't even really have in Santa Cruz. A lot of people will express that that's what they want to do, and there's a reason why the attrition rate is what it is. And the thing is, so in first phase, you wear green helmets, and you ring a bell to symbolically quit. It's actually a paperwork signature you have to do.
Sure.
It's a symbol, which the sound of that bell, it becomes an incredible motivation.
Yeah.
Later on in training,
you hear somebody.
Later on in training, you hear people ringing that bell, and a small portion of their soul comes to you, and you put it in the furnace.
It's a dark way of looking at it,
but it's 100%
it works,
correct.
Right? Okay.
And when we were in third phase, the final phase of training, the classroom for third phase when I went through was directly across. They called it a grinder, which is naval terminology for a large concrete pad. Because why would you call it a large concrete pad?
You want to grind somebody up on it.
So it's a grinder, and that's where there's white flippers. It's a really iconic portion of the SEAL pipeline, because you go and everybody stands on their flippers, and every day there's more flippers open. So we're in third phase. Hell Week is going on, and you'll get 15, 20, 30 quitters on a shift at the beginning of Hell Week, and they all stand at the bell and ring. And by the time they were done, we were getting our asses handed to us by the instructors because we were just screaming in joy at the people who were having their worst moment of their life. And again, it's a dark
So you had
thing.
like a nucleus of guys that were like cheering and almost being like indignant towards the adversity that they were putting you through. Like
not indignant, like we knew,
celebrating it almost.
Yeah, definitely not indignant.
Okay.
I knew you knew the adversity, and you knew that you had made it through something that was grinding other people to dust. So my class, we had 180 start, 18 of us made it all the way through the pipeline. So in that third phase classroom, we were in there losing our minds in joy.
Yeah.
It was I don't know, it's an incredible sensation of what that bell means as it shifts its way through. But every person who puts their helmet underneath the bell is a stud. You know, like in the modern day, when I went through, there was no pipeline. I went to boot camp with no guarantee of actually getting a shot at buds. And I think it was in the 4th week, they put in this VHS tape that was grainy and had like the lines coming across the screen until it settles.
Sure.
And it was like the Frogmen UDT, and you watch this 5-minute video, and a Navy diver comes up and goes, "Hey, who wants to try out for this program?" People raise their hand. You go do a swimming test, running test, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups. As you can tell, not a very robust screening. And the numbers you had to get on the pull-ups, I think, were like 12. Past that, and then you have to go pick a school because the attrition rate at buds is high enough that the Navy realized we need to train you before you go to buds, not after, because the people leaving buds are not in a great headspace. So I picked the shortest possible school that I could use to get to buds, which was a radar scope operator. If your and I's life depended on me using a radar scope, we're both dead, just so you know. Because all I did was like soft sand runs, PT, that's all I did. Sure. That's all I cared about. And then I got to buds and started that pipeline. Now you can go in, and I might be describing this a little bit off because I didn't go through this, but you can get a contract going in, and they will put together boot camp divisions, like probably close to 100 people, if not more, of people who are going to that pipeline already. Then after boot camp, you go across the street in Great Lakes, and I think it's a 8 or 12 week training pipeline to get ready to go to buds.
Wow.
Which is competitive because they have more students who want to go than slots available per class. So they compete for the slots, and the attrition rate is still 75 to 80%. So every dude who rings that bell and puts their helmet down is already a stud.
Right.
So it's a combination of doing, in high school, how did I stay focused? I didn't always, I didn't really study in school. I was all fucking off with my friends to a certain degree, and then I really started to dial it in as it got closer. But I would wake up early and go to the gym, go to 24-hour fitness. Some of the most embarrassing moments of my young adult life were at 24-hour fitness in the morning, running next to 2 older women who I thought were extremely attractive. Have you ever been on a treadmill and stepped off the portion that's running? Or that's moving?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, full backflip in front of people that I didn't know, and I was not emotionally prepared as like a 17-year-old man. I think I actually never went back to that facility, and I used my membership at a different one. But I did all that stuff. So you can be physically ready, but I think the biggest differentiator is between the years.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
What made you different?
I have no idea. I don't feel different. I feel.
I understand that, but
yeah.
you have to. After seeing so many people, and not just in like buds and failing, but so many people go into combat, and I'm sure you saw some of your brothers that were hardened, that did not respond the way that maybe they were trained to respond or they should have responded. What made you different? Not that you're perfect in all those combat situations, but you went over there, 17 different combat?
Oh, no. I went over 8 combat tours.
Okay, 8.
Yeah.
So of those 8 combat tours, I'm sure you saw some of those guys like I just described. So what was the common denominator between the guys that made it through, also the guys that went on combat missions, and then the guys that responded advantageously for the team? There's got to be denominators.
Well, combat is interesting. I hear people, or I have heard people talk about, very long time ago, there was a guy named SLA Marshall. And people can do their research on whether or not they think his information in his study, to use air quotes, was legitimate. I'm going to put him in the category of a fiction writer versus a nonfiction writer. Problem being, he was positioning it as nonfiction. What I will say is some interesting things happened. It seemed like a person who, in my opinion at least, would fall into the category of stolen valor. He was in the military, but his record and the things he did, especially under the microscope of looking back on it,
Sure.
it doesn't stand the litmus test. But even though a lot of what he was doing I consider to be total bullshit, they made legitimate training corrections that improved soldiering. So it's a little bit of a mix. But one of the main things that he did or said that he did is he would go interview soldiers coming back off the front in combat units. And he came up with a statistic that startled people at the time, and it was essentially less than a quarter of the people will actually be comfortable firing their weapon at an enemy soldier. And he would make that determination off of a single interview with the unit. And I believe he would talk with individuals as well. And because of that, to talk about the positive that came from that, prior to that time period, they were using circle bullseye targets for target practice. Post that information, they looked at it and they started using man-shaped silhouettes. And the firing rate of individuals on paper, it looks like, increased until you get to Vietnam, and it was in like the 90th percentile. One of the issues I have, which brings me back to your question about how people perform in combat, is if you ask somebody one time how they performed, it's not indicative of how they're going to perform every single time.
Right.
I have seen guys, and myself included, where you have days or nights, and maybe it's because you have some emotional stress, or you're worried about whether or not legitimately your rent check is going to bounce, and you're in an emotional place where you have less capacity, and things happen, and you don't respond the way that you want to. You don't live up to the standard that you had set for yourself, or that others probably had, and then the next night, when your head is in a clearer spot and you're pissed about how you had acted the night before, you perform better. So it's not a baseline. I've seen incredible bravery from people, and I've seen people freeze. And I've seen that happen in the same person. And people could probably say that I did the same thing. I leave my career and my performance to the judgment of my peers. It has to be that way. So I think it's important to realize, though, that it is a sine wave. Performance in combat is, you'll see people who are phenomenal, but they're not always. Just like your background, professional athletes, sometimes you rise to the occasion, and sometimes the occasion eats your lunch. I think the biggest common denominator would probably be a willingness to put yourself aside and care more about the people to your left and right.
I feel like that's what marriage is, what you just said. A willingness to put
combat
yourself aside. Yeah, it sounds like it. Think about it, though. Like my mentor, when he was coaching me on my marriage, he says, man, if you want to have a great marriage, you have to give up the right to be right. And I feel like that's kind of combat, is putting myself aside for the betterment of the team, for the betterment of the family, for the betterment of the legacy, for the betterment of the kids. Doesn't mean that you don't get your needs met. It just means you're willing to put yourself aside for the betterment of the team. Pretty interesting, man. And one of the things that you were mentioning there about the same person responding different ways, I've absolutely been that person. I retired in 2015, and then I was doing an ESPN radio show in New York, and so I retired. I went and got a TV job, which is how you and I connected.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was doing TV, I was doing radio, and it was probably week 8 of the season, and I got a phone call, and I'm literally in the studio like we are right now, ESPN studio in Manhattan, and I just got done doing the recap, or not the recap, but teasing up the Patriots and the Jets the next day. They were going to play in Foxborough. This was a Saturday at about noon, and I get a phone call, and it comes up on my phone. It says Jets front office, and I'm like, oh crap, because I said a bunch of really nice things about the Jets.
You're like, did I just record this live? What? Is somebody's ears burning?
And then when it came time to talk about their quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I was like, man, they're doing great. Their defense is like one of the most menacing in the league, but their quarterback, have you seen this guy try to throw it over 30 yards? It's a freaking joke.
So you gave him the sticks a little bit?
Yeah, so then we go to commercial break. My phone rings. It's Jets front office, and I'm like scrambling in my brain because I know what I just said, but in my mind, I didn't think it was that bad. Not bad enough to get a phone call. So I answer the phone call. It's Mike McCagnon, which was the GM at the time, and he said, hey, Steve, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm doing my radio show right now. He goes, are you in Manhattan or New York, New Jersey? I said, yes, sir. He goes, what do you think of? Do you think you could be in Foxborough tomorrow for the Jets Patriots game. I'm like, yeah, I think he wants me to like come and do the pregame show, like on the
That's where
sideline
my
or
head
whatever.
was going. Like, you're going to be there to commentate, or yeah.
And he's like, I'm like, yeah, sure, I could be up there. He goes, what's up? He goes, well, our punter has an infection in his leg, and we don't know if he can play tomorrow. He said, can you come to the Jets facility in the next couple of hours? And I go, well, my show's got about another hour to go, so let me finish this up. So I got off the phone with him. I called my wife, and I said, hey, grab my purple suit and grab my shoes out of the garage. They're in this bag underneath this other stuff. I went home, grabbed my stuff. To tie a bow on this story, I went there, met the team, and my quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the guy that I was literally just gunning on national radio. And I'm like, hey, so what's up, guys? So if you struggle on the first 3 downs, just guess what, Ryan? I'm going to come in and bail you out because I've seen you try to throw a ball over 30 yards. It was so embarrassing. But the point of the whole story is, for 10 years as a professional athlete, and sure there was a couple games where I crapped the bed and didn't perform, but after 10 years, knowing what you have, and kind of like for you as a Navy SEAL, and maybe for some of the guys or gals listening to this show, is you've responded in a way that made you feel well. You've responded in a way that has built your business. You've responded in a way that's changed your body. You've responded in a way that's benefited your marriage. But if you don't stay vigilant to that routine that got you to that space where your head was at when you went to combat and you responded in the right way, it's because you had more than just muscle memory. You had the confidence in your preparation that when you went to go take the shot, you were confident in everything being prepared. You didn't second guess it. Just like that guy that was interviewing people when they came back from combat, that's how they responded one time. And so when I played in this game against the Patriots, I crapped the bed, bro. I was so bad. I averaged 39 yards a punt.
I think I could average that.
Yeah, it was bad, dude. It was bad. And I'm not kidding you. On one of them, my first punt of the game rolled for 15, and it still ended up only being like a 43-yard punt. So I had just the most heinous game. But
you had also been out of the NFL.
Exactly. Think about it. I was sitting on my butt for 2 months. In my mind, I'm retired. I'm not exercising that mental, that physical, because in my mind, I've conditioned myself to be like Bruce Lee. Because, I mean, think about my position. I only got 4.3 plays per game. And I want everybody to hear me right now. I'm definitely not here to talk about how great I am. I was a punter. I essentially had a front row seat for these games. I will say that I am an elite athlete, but punters are not elite athletes. And so my point to mentioning that to you guys is I had 4.3 plays per game, and I made $197,000 a week. And so if you break that down, that's $50,000 a punt. So to bring this back to like Bruce Lee.
Holy shit, man.
You really, yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about like who's the highest, my dad's like a big numbers guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think you're the highest paid person on the planet because you only
per play.
Yeah, well, not even per play, per second. Think about it. I only play 7 seconds in a play. They snap the ball, and that takes about a second, and then I handle the ball for 1.2 seconds. So 2 seconds, the ball is gone, and it's usually in the air for 4 or 5 seconds, and then a couple seconds.
I have seen some of your plays that went a little longer when you were laying the heat on people.
That's right,
taking them down.
Yeah, come on, don't. People are going to Google it and going to be like, Andy, you think this is laying the heat? So do not Google Steve Weatherford or tackling.
In comparison to other punting cohorts,
for sure,
you were laying the heat.
Okay, so thank you for the honor, Andy. I am the toughest kid on the short bus. That's really what it is. Though. I'm on the bus. And so exactly what you were just saying about putting those helmets underneath the bell, I'm a badass too. You know what I mean? And all the men listening to this have had that moment in their life where they responded favorably, where they prepared, and the moment of execution was there, and they did it. And they feel good about themselves, but then they just relax. And it's kind of like, a lot of speakers will talk about the thermometer for your life. And that's why I'm so interested by you, because I look at your life, and then, I look at where we were at a couple of years ago when we created our friendship, and then where you're at right now and what you're doing is you never sabotage, at least from the outside looking, and I'm sure you'll speak to this, but it doesn't look like you are adjusting the thermostat in your life. Like in high school, it might have been at 82 when you were fooling around, and then you dialed it in, and then you got into the SEALs, and then there was the next level of discipline. There was a next level of sacrifice. There was a next level of vision. And because of that, that was able to obviously take you through everything that you went through in Navy SEAL training camp. And the same thing for me. I hate comparing my life to soldiers' life, but I just believe there's a lot of community aspects to it that helps build who you are, and not just for like that moment when you have like the Eminem, like it's your moment, but also moving forward from there. You've done an incredible job on building on who you've become. And I feel like so many men are getting confused on what the purpose of life is we're never going to be. Like as fathers and husbands and men, we're never just going to be. And if you are just being, you're getting passed up. That's when those dudes are ringing that bell and leaving that place. And like you said, they're amazing. They're studs in their own right, but they made a decision. They made a decision to let their current circumstances predict their future. They made the decisions based upon their emotions and not their commitments. You made a commitment when you were 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You will not be denied. And then I'm definitely not telling you what your mindset is, but just becoming friends with you and then knowing a couple Navy SEAL buddies and then knowing some elite performers and athletes and things like that. I believe it's the mindset of you won't be denied the one that won't be denied. Like you're not willing to accept anything else other than being a Navy SEAL, being world-class consultant, being a freaking pilot. Like you're a sicko, dude. You know what I mean? Think about that. Like think about all of the different certifications and experiences. And one of the things that inspires me the most about you isn't just the works that you've done, but it's the way that you're paying it forward. It's the way that you're trying to teach other people, not how to be a Navy SEAL, but how to up-level their mindset, how to up-level their relationships. Because at the end of the day, man, alignments to me are the number one most important thing in life, because as an entrepreneur, and then I'll stop talking for a minute, but as an entrepreneur, I made a lot of mistakes in pursuing the assignment of success, meaning like, hey, I want to go build a supplement company. So let me go make friends with a bunch of fitness people and supplement people. And I'm making friendships with them based upon an assignment that I want to execute, like an operation that you would want to execute.
Very targeted.
But the problem is, and this is why as a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6 was successful, and why some businesses aren't successful is because they create alignments based upon that assignment instead of creating alignments and then pursuing an assignment. So for you and your Navy SEALs, you guys were forged in a fire, and it helped build character traits in you that inspired the men that were next to you and then the next SEAL group that came up. Dude, you were a part of the most elite SEAL team pretty much of all time. I mean, I don't know, but from my opinion, from just a bystander, the best of all time. But what made you guys successful, and what made the different COs pick you to put you on these different, it's because of the character traits, not just the synergy of the guys. It's the character traits that help them to get identified. And once you identify or discover a gift, then it is your assignment as a leader and my assignment as a leader to develop that gift, discover, develop. And then what happens when you guys to go to Afghanistan to save our country and to save our future and to give my family a legacy? You deploy, discover, develop, deploy. That's what the SEALs is. And I think for me in my life and for the rest of my life, that's what I believe my calling is to help other men discover their gifts, not the gifts to help your gifts be like Andy's gifts or Steve's gifts, but help you figure out what your unique fingerprint is. There was a study done in Switzerland 2 years ago that proved that 99% of our DNA is exactly the same.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
There's only 1% of our DNA that's different. So why do we spend so much of our life trying to be like Andy Stump, or trying to be like Steve Weatherford, or trying to be like Ed Milet, or trying to be like Andy Frisella or Ryan Mickler? We're running on a treadmill that's going to kick you off because you're not built that way. You know? So I choose to live a life to surround myself with people like you that have discovered their gift at a young age and have developed it and have deployed it. I feel like I'm the same way, but you have more gifts inside of you. And that's why you keep doing all these different things. If you guys go look at Andy's website and go look at the About Me section, you will feel so inadequate initially.
No.
Yeah, Andy, don't tell me how I felt when I read it this morning.
I'm not telling you how you felt. I'm just saying people shouldn't go there. Don't waste your time.
I'm not saying that they should feel that way, but I'm just telling you, man to man, when you read somebody's bio like yours, or maybe somebody's bio like mine, it's really easy for us to disconnect ourselves from the possibility of living a life like that. But there was a decision that you made at a young age to burn the boats, that you're not going to accept the plan B. And because of that, you stayed in the fight. And like we were talking earlier, like it's the guys that laughed with you when you were in that grind, on that grinder, that allowed you to grow through that process. And this is the last thing that I'll say and pass it back to you. But there's a scripture in the Bible, Romans 5:3-5, that says, when you rejoice in your suffering, that suffering produces endurance, and that endurance produces character, and that character produces hope. And I feel like that's like a 1, 2, 3, 4-step process for you and I to continue, to do what we're doing, but then to give other men a really simple blueprint to how to achieve and make change and transformation in their own life. Is when you're going through suffering, I think everybody in 2020 has gone through some form of suffering.
I think you're supposed to. I think life is supposed to be portion of working your way through that suffering.
But if you don't rejoice in that suffering, and if you go through that suffering alone, you'll never rejoice in it. Think about trying to go through BUD/S training by yourself.
Oh, well, first it would be impossible because it required team evolutions. But yeah, if you were just
even if
there,
it didn't that, even if it was just a set number of things that you need to do over 4 days, and it was mapped out for you, you knew exactly what it was.
Oh, the easiest way to get people to quit would be to isolate them and then just
what do you
press
think
happen
in 2020 right now?
Yeah.
Is the government and leadership is forcing us to isolate. And because of that isolation, the way that God created you and me was to be in relationship. The greatest memories that, and I don't know you that well, but I could forecast that the greatest memories that you have in your life are shared with relationships. Your children, your wife, your brothers, your dad. Just look back at like the really formidable experiences of your life. They were more special when you shared them with a relationship. And to kind of like circle this back to that alignment that I was talking about, something transformational happened in my life when I started to pursue men and business relationships that had the same character traits that I did. And when you can create alignments based upon character traits, then when you go into battle or you go into launching that business or you go into a really tough season in your marriage, you have that brother to talk to. And kind of like what we were talking about with the SEAL training, if you don't have somebody with you, you are never going to be able to unlock your best self, because it's men that help you see what the amazing gifts and blessings and talents that God gave you that you don't know, because you're sitting here in front of me with a resume as long as my arm, but you're like, well, I'm not any different. Because you only live in your own mind.
And in comparison to my cohort growing up, it's average.
Right.
It's, I was thinking when you're talking about the memories that mean the most to me, and I was thinking back right now, I can't think of a single meaningful memory that's just me.
Right.
Like there I was by myself. It's nothing that sticks out in my life is like that. I tell you what I think makes it tough for people to live their life as who they are, as opposed to who other people are.
You're good. I'm gonna grab water. Is that all right? Water in here?
That's beer.
Is that okay?
It's a keg of Guinness. You can grab one if you want to.
Yeah, I just need something wet in my mouth.
For those of you that didn't hear, Steve said he just needed something wet in his mouth. So
Here I am.
Here he is, people.
How amazing he is and how much I admire him. And then I tell him I want something wet in my mouth. And the only thing he's got is Guinness beer, and it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. We're in Montana. Let's do this.
Yeah. I'm not saying you have to have 15. I'm saying it could be a breakfast, a lunch, or a dinner. It's generally considered to be a meal in a cup or a can.
Cheers.
What I think makes it really tough for people, to include myself, I'll get caught up in this, to live your life the way you want to as opposed to chasing or comparing other people, is these damn phones with the apps on there. Everything is comparative. And I need to be very clear. Like my life has wave tops and trenches for sure. And I just like anybody else, if I'm going to engage on these platforms, which to a degree, if you are doing business, or are involved in that world, you're going to touch them to some degree. I don't know many people who are completely off of them. They might have people who do it for them, or they might source it, but you still have a choice. You can show the wave tops, or you could show the troughs, or you could only show the wave tops, which I see a lot of people do.
Right.
But I think it's important for people to realize that every life is going to have peaks and valleys. You may not know this, but I'm 18 months into a divorce, almost 19 months. One of the biggest troughs of my life, for sure.
Yeah.
issues with my kids. Some of the biggest wave tops, some of the biggest troughs, and how they have responded to that. And I've talked a little bit about it, but I leave most of it to handle in my own personal life privately, because I am the one who has a platform and a microphone sitting in front of me, and it is not fair for me to say anything about anybody else who doesn't have the equal platform, which is why I've been honest that that's the situation that I'm going through, but I leave all details to be worked out between the individuals. But it's tough. I'll get caught up, scrolling through social media, and you sit in the back of your head like, yeah, it must be nice. Oh, nice car, or, oh, hey, it must be nice, this, that, or the other. And if you let it, I think that'll scramble your eggs a little bit. Between years. Well, I think you and I might have an advantage because I'm in my 40s now. How old are you?
I'll be 38 in about a month.
Youngin'.
I know.
But
I feel like a kid, bro.
But you have enough laps around the sun that you can look at social media and see through what it is. Like,
I've also had a lot of the things, and not to sound like arrogant or anything, but I had a lot of the things that I thought would make me happy. You know, like a Mercedes and a big house and like everybody knowing who I am. And man, dude, 3 years ago, I was in a really dark spot. You know?
My point is, we're older. My biggest concern when it comes to people living their own life is I look at how social media is impacting my kids.
Yeah.
They don't have that filter. They don't have the ability to see, TikTok is a weird example. I don't even have it on my phone, but I watch my daughter's interaction with it. And she's following this young girl who has, I think, 160, 170 million followers. And I will watch the videos with her sometimes, and it worries me because my daughter will try to reach out to that person or comment, and she's concerned, and she'll see that this person has a beef with somebody else online. Neither of these people my daughter knows,
right?
But my daughter's invested in it. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? Like, this is dangerous. This has nothing to do with you or as a young woman, or you know what I mean? Like, it's concerning to me, and I think it can derail I don't know. Social media, what I see is a lot of people on a lot of wave tops, which is absent the suffering that you're talking about. I try to share equally wave tops and troughs because I think life's supposed to be a grind. Everything that I value the most in life are the things that it hurt me the most to achieve. And I think that if you avoid that, I do know people, well, I can't say I know anybody who's completely avoided it, but I can see, again, and I'm making kind of an assumption, but I can see people who take the easy path. They avoid the struggle. They avoid the grind. And it doesn't lead to a well-rounded human being, in my opinion.
Well,
would be a polite way to put that.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, and it really comes down to something that you're really good at, and I've formed a decent relationship with, and that's discipline. You know?
You've formed a better relationship with discipline than me.
Yeah, you say that just because I'm like leaner than you, or maybe I have bigger arms, but
both of those things are actually true. Your arms are the size of my legs.
Well, think about this. I'm incredibly inspired by what you've done with your voice. For real. Like you can talk about, and here's the deal. There are absolutely days, Andy, I don't even have to ask you, that you've done podcasts that you haven't wanted to do podcasts.
For sure.
And honestly.
Where was the last thing I actually wanted to do was open my mouth and talk to anybody about anything at any time.
I mean, think about this, dude. You just said it. How hard has it been for you, and just being real, how hard has it been for you to reach out and do all the normal grind that you do when you're going through this valley with the person that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with? That's hard, dude. It's hard to pour from a cup that feels empty.
It's hard to pour from a cup when you're starting to question what's in the cup as well. The whole process, it was my decision to initiate the divorce process. We had been together, married for 18, together for 20. It's a long time.
That's half your life.
It's half my life. It was half my life at that time. And there were some of the darkest periods where I legitimately was questioning who I was as a man, more so than anything, any SEAL training or any of that stuff. The impact that I was going to leave on my kids, the impact that an unhealthy, failed relationship would have on the thoughts for my kids going forward. I thought so much about the decision because I don't want my kids to be afraid of relationships or afraid of marriages. What I want them to do is have examples of good, healthy, growing, symbiotic relationships, not the opposite of that. I'm not going to characterize the previous relationship again because I only one that has the microphone. But it's rough to give anybody anything when you're not even sure who you are.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I found it tough for me. And this is actually, I haven't even said it on my own podcast or social media. When is this podcast coming out?
Monday.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just announce it here. I'm having another kid.
That doesn't surprise me. You have 14.
Yeah, well, I got 5. I know it seems that way, but God's given us another baby coming in May, and to speak to that, when you were talking about your marriage, and you were talking about your kids, and you're talking about social media, and how it really makes you nervous when you see what your daughter or your son or even your significant other is consuming on social media. You know for a fact that it's going to influence what they say. It's going to influence who they become. And so I have found this to be really effective. I guess this would be actionable and practical for everybody listening to this right now. It's one thing that I've been able to do that's really kind of protected me, because you follow me on social media. Like I share quite a bit. I would call it probably almost hyperactive sharer. But one of the ways that I've been able to develop a relationship and a discipline at the same time with social media is the same way like the foods that we eat. Like you're really hardcore into this jujitsu, and you understand how important the consistent investments that you make every day. It's
the key.
And how that will develop you,
have
as
to build
a man
the equity.
And as an athlete. Well, how is that any different for us as leaders of our home and leaders to our children and our wife and our friends if we are not filtering what we are consuming as social media? The food that we eat is important, but I'll tell you this, I know for a fact I can eat like crap, but if I'm staying on my other routine that is dialing in my spiritual, my mental, and all those different categories that make me a good leader or a great leader or a poor leader, if I can stick to those, food doesn't matter. But one of the things that I have noticed that has been more toxic to me than any other variable that makes who I am is social media and who I follow. So the actionable tip would be go and look at Instagram and the people that you follow. And if they don't make you feel better or do better, don't follow them.
Yeah.
Like why are you following them in order? You're almost like programming in disappointment. You're programming in I'm not enough. You're programming
Negativity.
in depression. You're programming in I don't have what they have, because like you said, the majority of social media, and if you want to be good at social media, share your wave tops.
Yeah.
It's an algorithm that is proven. But I've literally seen a picture that I've posted, and then I'll post the same picture 6 months later knowing that it's going to get about the same amount. It's like one of those viral videos.
Yeah.
But if you put in the caption, the Instagram caption, God, Jesus, Trump 2020, any of those things, Instagram will make sure that people don't see that, because I can go from getting on average, I don't know, call it 5,000 likes and 100 comments. And if it's a post with the same picture, different caption, Instagram will make sure that people don't see that. So my point is Instagram's playing us for a fool. And we're just diving into it.
And they're not alone. Let's just say that whole ecosystem.
For sure. It's not just Instagram. I'm singling them out because
You've seen it though, right?
They're
The social
juggernaut.
dilemma.
I haven't watched it, but I have the preface of it and how it's reconditioning everybody.
And their main economy is your time and attention.
100%. That's
Targeted.
That's the currency.
Yeah. That is the currency that they're after.
100%.
And I watched that and then looked at my kids. It's almost, I guess I've never really thought about social media input as almost thinking about it as a food source.
100%. Well,
I've never made
the
that
way
in
the
my
way
mind.
your body looks is a reflection of the food that you put in it. The words that come out of our mouth are a reflection of what we put into it.
Yeah.
So like waking up in the morning and going straight to your phone to see your text messages and your emails, guess what you're doing? You are allowing the world to tell you how to feel about you, how to feel about life, how to feel about business. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's literally what we need. We are so conformed to the patterns of this world. Just think about the narrative shift on social media. And I was a part of it too. We're on social media, and all of a sudden, this whole Black Lives Matter thing blows out, and they divide the country racially. And then after they accomplish that, then they divide the country politically. And then this is the country that we live in. Are you freaking kidding me? There is not another country on this planet that people will be like, dude, F this country, and then still stay there. Are you kidding me? Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world. So all of the narrative on social media and the narrative on the media and the narrative on all these different sites that we go to, they're conforming our mind. But are you going to get mad at the media? You going to get mad at Black Lives Matter or these different things that are anti-American? No. Get mad at you can get mad at them, but don't sit there and keep taking
You're the
vitamins.
one consuming them.
Yeah, don't take the vitamins, because guess what? You're going to wake up a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, you're going to be depressed, and you're going to go from like, hey, I had a pretty good life, to I'm really well informed and I'm depressed AF.
And let's add to that a pandemic, social isolation, uncertainty about an economic future. Mm-hmm. There are I would, if I got to choose 2020, the scent of the candle would be dumpster fire. Yeah, I'm trying to get somebody to make it for me.
Burnt hair and baby turd.
Could it really get any?
It could. Yes. My answer is yes.
What's going to be next? A tidal wave?
I'm choosing to rejoice in my suffering, because I know my suffering will build endurance. And I know, and essentially what that means is like, you can handle more. You go to Navy Buds training, you can handle more, because you're rejoicing with your homeboys in that suffering, and that suffering leads to endurance, and that endurance leads to character. And that's what you and I as leaders, we really ultimately want to do, is lead and influence people. But you can't lead and influence people unless they respect you.
And you can't do it for them. And the thing people have to understand is, because I get asked this all the time, they'll say mental toughness, are you born with it or is it taught? And the answer is yes. You're born with the requisite amount, but it can also be taught. You can expand who you are as a person. To use that cup as a analogy or a metaphor, and I use this a lot when talking about post-traumatic stress and how people will behave in combat, and how two people can experience the same thing and it'll have a catastrophic effect for one and not an effect on another. But you could use it for physical capacity as well. Right. Let's say you and I started off with two cups identical like that, and you took the path that you took with discipline, through diet, through exercise, through pushing yourself. What your body's physically capable of is that cup getting a little bit bigger microscopically. Mm-hmm. Time, days, weeks, years, all of those things. The person who doesn't go that path, their cup stays the same size. So then you're able to tolerate more as a human being. Buds is a good example.
And it doesn't throw you off as much.
It doesn't throw you off.
It's the same stimulus, but you handle it different.
Correct. So, you go through Buds, and yes, I think you do come out of that with an enhanced understanding of mental toughness. But the mental challenges don't end at that end of 6-month process in Buds. It's an entire career of trying to figure out problems that people think are impossible in high consequence environments. And you have to deal with failure. You have to deal with loss. Sometimes you get to deal with success, and that's an easy one. You just slam the cup down and you're good to go. But it's all microscopic improvements that have to be done by the individual, both mentally and physically. That equity has to be put in. You can't just put a cup on a table and come back 5 years later and say, well, why can't this hold any more volume? Right. You have to do the work.
It's got to be stretched.
Yeah.
Stretching
over time.
Like you're doing
over time.
You're doing jujitsu,
which is also known as folding clothes with people still in it, or involuntary yoga.
Well, there you go.
To speak of stretching.
So I'm sure when you first got into this, you were like,
get smashed.
Bro, my flexibility's got, you probably saw a lot of things that needed to get improved, but flexibility was probably nearly one of the first things that you noticed, because it's not power. You're a pretty powerful dude. You're aggressive. You like the noise.
Your opponent just uses that. They're like, oh, you want to play that game?
Oh, you're really strong? Cool, I'll use that against you. That's why I haven't ever gone to jiu-jitsu, because I'm really strong, and I take pride in that.
And that's the thing. That would be the hardest thing for you to get over. But once you did, you would be a nightmare. Just given, because I had my coach on recently, and it was we were walking here. I train jiu-jitsu literally a block away.
I want to go see the gym when we get done.
Yeah. And we're walking over here, and it was him and his one of his fellow black belts, and they're talking like the two biggest lies in jiu-jitsu. Strength doesn't matter, and weight doesn't matter. And they both just laugh. And you're like, you're telling me if I'm big and strong that doesn't matter? Like, it absolutely does. And trust me, everybody wishes they were big and strong.
But if you rely on it.
Your learning curve goes like this, and then you fall off. Whereas the person who shelves their attributes and puts themselves on a low trajectory towards a distant horizon, there's a point where that like maximal strength output and this low trajectory meet, and one person's journey in that particular art, jiu-jitsu, continues on, and the other guy, generally, from what I have seen in my limited time, 2.5 years, they start getting really frustrated because they're not willing to shelf that attribute and trust the technique. And a lot of the times, I think it's just insecurity between the years.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You said insecurity, because I wrote down a couple of things when we were talking. I call it steady stacking. Is when those promises that you make to yourself, you just keep keeping them to yourself. And obviously, kind of like what you're saying with jiu-jitsu, is your skills will improve. But one thing that I've noticed during these different processes of, like you becoming a pilot or becoming a SEAL or becoming, world-class speaker or world-class consultant, these different things that you do, the process was very, very similar. And I think for me, one thing I've noticed about myself as I've gotten older and I continue to set like these goals, kind of similar to what you have, lofty goals of self-improvement, but also helping people along the way while you're doing it. It's not just about you. You're sharing it with other people, and I'm doing my best to do the same thing. But one thing I've noticed is I trust myself more. Like in the NFL, I feel like my mentor said this to me the other day, is everything in the middle feels like failure. I'm sure that when you were a Navy SEAL and you were at like the height of when you were operating, at least for me, even when I was my best in the NFL, I felt like I was failing. But now when I look back on that chapter of my life, like I never
felt like you were failing, or you were afraid of failing? Because I think there's two different things.
I felt like an imposter. I didn't feel like a failure.
Imposter syndrome is real. I had that my entire career.
I didn't know that. Well, we could talk about that, man.
I actually think it's a good sign. I think it means you're critically aware of where you are. You're aware that you're surrounded by people who are amazing, and it keeps you up at night that you don't want to let them down. So, I mean, I guess you could describe it as imposter syndrome. I don't think either you or I were imposters. It was just that recognition, like I have to do my absolute best at all times or I'm letting the people down around me.
That's interesting because for me, I definitely obviously felt like an imposter, but I was really good at the skill that I did. Like for you, you were really good at, if I could just put myself in your position as a Navy SEAL, I felt really good at my ability to operate, like my ability to be a great leader, my ability to shoot well, my ability to
shoot, move, and communicate would be the number, like the three.
I feel great about my ability to do that. But in a weird way, in a dark way, I didn't feel like I was valuable. I felt like my skills to communicate and shoot, and I felt like those were my value to people. And if I didn't have those, then I was worthless. And so it was really kind of a strange time for me mentally when I decided to retire, because I was still healthy enough to play, but I was in this mental space where I've done a lot of these different things in the NFL that I thought would make me happy. I thought would fulfill me.
End state, if you will.
Yeah. And dude, holding this trophy, 47 miles, Lombardi trophy, 47 miles from my hometown, you would think, surrounded by your dad, your mom, your grandmas, your sisters, brothers, all that you'd feel different about who you are. I was still very proud of myself, but to kind of circle it back to everything in the middle feels like failure. I felt like my career was pretty successful, but I never felt successful as a person. It's kind of like when I honored you before we hit the mics. I'm like, dude, you got to be one of the most decorated Navy SEALs of all time. He's like, oh, no.
I'm not, though. I mean,
but still, think about it. We have trouble receiving honor from other men. We just want to slough it off. We work so hard to get it.
Some people do. Other people completely fuel themselves off of that honor, whether it be...
It's an empty tank, though.
Yeah, whether it be real or fake.
That was me, though. That was me. I thrived off of other people telling me how great that I was. So it makes sense that when I'm around people and I'm holding a trophy and everybody's getting to be a part of the success that myself and my team created, I felt so good about myself. But then later on the night, this is February 5th, 2012, when we won the Super Bowl in Indianapolis. It was against Tom Brady, and we won 21-17 last minute, and I'll never forget how...
This was when you were playing for the Giants.
Giants, yeah.
Wasn't it like a Hail Mary pass?
You're thinking of 2008 when they beat the undefeated Patriots. That was in Arizona. When we beat them, there was also...
It was like the last second, though, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was the best way to beat the best player of all time.
Sure. And can we be honest, the most handsome player of all time?
He is so handsome. He's so dreamy. I can't even hate on him.
I know. I've met him twice.
And he's a good husband and a good dad.
I get lost in his eyes. I don't know what else to say.
And he's so tall, too.
I know what I'm saying. He's like Manute Bol, but I just get lost in those eyes.
Tom Brady is dreamy.
Oh, I know.
But we beat him.
I digress.
Yeah, I digress. So we beat him. And I remember having those moments with my family where it was just like, man, I'm a little boy. It felt like you were a little boy, and everything everybody ever wanted for you, you got it. And everything you ever wanted for other people, you were able to give it to them too. I knew I was going to be able to buy my mom the car that I'd always promised her, and all these things were going to come true. But I'll never forget, Andy, going back to my hotel room, because in the NFL, they don't let, even if you're married, your wife come to your room because of all the different things, etc. So I remember going back to my room about 2 o'clock in the morning after the after party and everything. I remember walking up to the window, Circle City, Indianapolis, and looking down at all of the people just celebrating and high-fiving and taking shots, and just, you couldn't hardly see the ground of Indianapolis from the 17th floor that I was on. And I remember taking a deep breath and before I could blow it out, I just remember like talking to God and being like, this is it? Like, this is it.
The apex.
I don't feel any different. It was like almost like a wave of depression came over me, because all of the discipline, all of the sacrifice, all of the execution, everything that I needed to do to do that thing and to be great, I did it. And so now I should feel different about me, not just about my skills. Because for the longest time, I thought I needed to improve my skills and be generous with people and be the most philanthropic person in the NFL, which I did that. Walter Payton, a Man of the Year award, the fittest man in the NFL. I won that twice by Muscle and Fitness. And the only reason I mention those things to the listeners right now is for you guys to understand there's nothing that you're going to achieve in your life that's going to make you feel different about you. If you're looking for extrinsic validation, you're never going to get it. And I believe a lot of us are searching for that on social media. And guess what? Your wave tops are never going to look like somebody else's wave tops, because your 1% of your DNA is different. You can do things that person can't do. But if you spend your life trying to be like you or trying to be like somebody else, you're going to fail at it. So why not be one of one? Why not be, or why work to be a second best carbon copy of you or anybody else? But I feel like that's what social media is doing to us.
It's a tough path to walk, I think. And I think it's even more so because the person has to put the steps in front of them and lay out their own path.
And they don't trust themselves.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's more enticing to follow a map that somebody has drawn or written for you than to try to navigate it on your own. Because if you're navigating on your own and you make mistakes, who is to blame?
Right.
And that's a tough pill to swallow, man.
Yeah, this ownership, man. I mean, that's kind of like what Jocko Willink. I don't know him, but that's his thing, man. Is owning
extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership. Yeah,
I like to mess with him. I'm going to write a book called Extremely Limited Ownership.
Extreme Ownership, Volume 2.
Yeah,
bigger and better.
Chapter 1: There are no bad leaders, only bad teams. And I'll publicly harass him about it. I was like, Jocko, I need you to write the foreword on this. He's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever, write it and I'll do it. Yeah, he's a good dude.
I'm impressed with him too. He seems like a pretty impressive man.
He's a guy who I think is perfectly suited for the social media platform. He keeps it short, succinct. He's on, his topic, and I think one of the things that I never served with him directly in the SEAL teams. I've gotten to spend a lot more time with him post. We just we're crossing coasts and different units, and it's. I think he's always been interested in leadership, and I think he'd also be the first person to tell you that the leadership principles he talks about, he didn't create them. The community, we both came from the same pot of soup, and the stuff that he talks about and really dives into at a more granular level, which is definitely unique to him. The way that he is taking those concepts and then just going down and down and down and down, that's unique to him for sure. The concept itself came from that community, but I can't think of a better message to be spread on that platform. That's exactly, he puts up black and white pictures of his watch in the morning.
He's on brand, dude. That's what it is.
That's what I'm saying.
He's on brand.
He's not I've never seen him post a picture of, sunsets occasionally, friends that are coworkers that he's lost along the way, a little bit of a motivational opening, black and white on Monday morning, and a little bit of stuff about his family. That to me is a wave top, or not even, actually, it's not even a wave top. That's just a person who is presenting their message on brand, however you'd want to describe it.
Disciplined and on brand and consistent.
And it has an impact. I know, I've seen people with, Jocko tattoos. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
Get you some of that. It's like,
impact,
wow,
man.
It's impact for sure.
Yeah.
Or people that will go on, get on the Jocko hashtags and look at people who've lost 100 pounds or 200 pounds. That to me is why I think these platforms are so powerful. It's just the other side of that coin that scares the crap out of me.
It seems like, to agree with you, it seems like Jocko has a very good relationship with social media. It seems like he has a plan with social media, and it seems like he sticks to it on social media.
And the funniest part about that is if you had me bet on like the one team guy who probably never would be on social media, it probably would have been Jocko.
Yeah, he's found what works for him and what doesn't draw him off of the purpose.
Yeah.
You know?
I heard him describe it once, and I think it might have been on Joe's podcast, where he's basically saying he feels like a leader again. Like he has not necessarily subordinates, but a community of people that he's involved with, which for somebody coming out of the military who was in a leadership role, that would be hard to replace. To just drop yourself out of that and try to laterally shift and integrate somewhere else, that'd be difficult to do. But he's found a good home for sure. It's crazy. That's the stuff I love seeing.
Yeah.
My daughter watching TikTok for hours at a time. I don't love seeing that.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. I've got my son's just turned 13. My daughter's 11. I've got another daughter that's 7, another daughter that's 5, another daughter that's 2, and then I'm about to have another son. So
I was going to ask, do you guys find out before?
yeah,
or do
it's
you...
a boy. So my first is a boy, my last is a boy, and 4 in the middle. It's very
Are you sure it's going to be your last?
No.
I was going to say.
How sick is that? How sick is that? I mean, think about it, Andy. You were talking about social media. Have you ever looked on social media where I'm golfing? Have you ever looked on social media where I'm surfing? Have you ever looked on social media where I have some hobby that is for me?
No.
I don't, man.
Yeah.
I truly do, man. I know everybody loves their family and their kids, but to me, and it's shifted in the last 3 years, but to me, kind of like what I feel like maybe you might be experiencing right now as your kids are getting older, man, I look at my son. I have 5 summers left, dude.
My oldest is 17. I have 17, 15, and 12. His birthday is one day after mine. So next year, he will no longer be considered a child in the eyes of the law. And he could go and leave Montana, go do whatever he wants to do. And it is shocking and startling how little time I have left. And to be honest, it's even more compounded because when it comes to the divorce, he has sporadically talked to me over the last year and has spent no time with me.
Yeah, it's been tough, huh?
It's been very tough. And I see a counselor every week. I try to talk to as many people as I can about trying to figure out a way to maintain boundaries but be healthy, to take the long-term approach.
It's tough, man.
It is tough, especially when you have to think about maybe he's going to be gone for a few years and he has to he's 17 and a half, not 17 and a half, but over 17. I mean, I remember being there. You think you know a lot, but you're missing a little bit of mileage around the sun. But he'll get that over time, and I hope that he changes course and comes back. I think the only thing I can do is be true to who I am and hope that he sees that. Yeah. But that's a long, tough, painful path to sit yourself on.
Yeah, here's the deal, man. As a brother, I don't think it's going to be years, and I want you to also know, like as a father, what you're doing and how you conduct yourself in this season is going to teach him everything he needs to know about who you really are. Because it's easy for you and I to lead when we have a winning season. You know, like when you're the Giants and you're 13-2 and you're going into the last game of the season. You know you're going to go to the playoffs. So, like, everybody's got a great attitude. You know what I mean?
You don't have to be like, come on, guys, let's give it our best effort.
What about the seasons when you're 3-12? And that might be a season that people that are listening to us right now, or maybe a season, a day here or a day there, you might feel like that. But I think it's important, kind of like that verse, Romans 5:3-5. It's just been really thick on my heart for the last week, and that's why I keep mentioning it. Is man, I feel like it for this year that we're in, and for this last 18-month period that you're in, and then for me personally, if I can share something vulnerably, dude, I'm in marriage counseling right now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm talking about it the way I'm talking about it, because I'm in that season, bro.
And I think that's a natural thing, by the way. I know a few people. I'm not going to say a lot, but I know a few people who are resistant to the idea of marriage counseling, and to me, it's like, dude, you were a professional football player. I was a professional soldier. If somebody is interested or has questions about those things, you would go seek out a professional in whatever field it is you have questions. Anybody who tells me that their marriage is perfect or they're an expert in marriage, I'm like, immediately one eye goes up. I'm like, okay, buddy. And so when you have problems, go find the professional.
Well, there's also a difference in between an expert in something and somebody that's good at doing it.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like how many instructors did you meet on your come up that could tell you how to do it, but they couldn't fart in the wind? You know what I mean?
I actually found it to be the other way. There were so many guys who could operate at an incredibly high level.
Couldn't teach you.
Very few of them were able to take their personal ability to perform and replicate it in other people, which is an interesting conundrum because it's like, well, I want the community to generationally grow, and you're a phenomenal operator, but you can't teach. how much long-term value do you actually have? We need you, but we also need the people who can generationally pass this knowledge
It's
on.
almost kind of like, man, just keep the operators in the field and have them teach the teachers.
Yeah. It's,
You know?
I mean, it's an interesting balance that again falls back on leadership to make sure that they have both, right? Both edges of the sword are sharp.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's a tough season, man. I'm definitely gonna be praying for you on that. But like to that verse, rejoicing in our suffering. Like 2020 for me, I got a supplement company. We didn't have supplements for 2 months. There's some suffering there, bro. You know what I mean? There's suffering there. You have a business that sells something that you don't have.
Yeah. Was it a supply chain issue?
Yeah. It was just like when this whole pandemic thing started, and they wanted to like double check our ingredients because we have some of them, shipped in from different locations to batch. So it was a mess. But man, I just learned a lot about my marriage. I learned a lot about who I am. I mean, this is a 3-13 season, and
For I think just about everybody.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple people that are knocking it out of the park financially, but then when we talk about how God really created us to live in relationship, like, are they getting that portion of their life filled as well? Because a lot of the people that you and I will meet, and a lot of the people you probably work with as a consultant, are extraordinarily good at creating money. They're extraordinarily good at creating wealth, but how good are they at doing marriage? How good are they at doing relationship? How good are they at time management and discipline? And so we as a society will honor and praise those people that are so good at that one thing, like a Navy SEAL, like a pro athlete, like an entrepreneur that, builds a whole bunch of success there. But it's almost kind of like, well, if we get really successful in one area, then we definitely don't need a coach for like something like marriage. But think about how many coaches you had when you were on your come up that taught you how to shoot, that taught you how to do this.
World-class coaches in every single discipline.
Yeah, probably 11, 12, 15 different coaches.
At every opportunity.
Exactly. I was a punter and I had 11 coaches.
What?
I mean, not just for my punting.
I was going to say.
But I had 11 coaches that were watching me. And if we actually want to go through my individual coaches, I had an acupuncturist, I had a flexibility specialist, I had a sports psychologist, I had my own special teams coach, the assistant special teams coach, and then all of the guys in the training room that are making sure that you're healthy for practice or games. So point to being is like, I look at my life and in the season that I'm in right now and where my marriage is, it's not elite. My body is elite. My discipline is elite. There's a lot of areas of my life where I'm compartmentalizing my excellence. I'm compartmentalizing my discipline. And then when I get at home, and I know a lot of men will connect with this, is like, man, we operate so hard during the day. When we come home, we just want to,
take the body armor off.
Right. But that is our opportunity to lead, And so I don't want men to hear this like you have to lead when you're exhausted, but it's about creating the blueprint for a life that you want to live. But understand that life, that marriage, that business, that body that you want, it might be 2-3 years away. But understand that steady stacking, making those investments, and then eventually things will change for you. But if you don't rejoice in your suffering, meaning having hope for the future, because that will build your endurance to sustain that. And then when you sustain that, you're giving yourself enough time to build the muscle because you have capacity. And now you can build character, AKA muscle. And once you build muscle, men can notice you. When I walk into a room, this is not being self-boastful, but I'll wear a shirt like this that's a little bit tight, a little bit small.
Your son's shirt.
Because, my son's shirt. I shop at Baby Gap because when I walk into the room, I want people to know that I'm disciplined. I want people to know that I'm goal-oriented. I want people to know that I will pay the mother flipping price. But I wasn't doing that in my marriage. I had no blueprint to grow in my marriage. I had no blueprint to grow in my faith. And then 3 years ago in San Diego, when I moved from New York and I retired and I got out to San Diego, I was able to get around some really mighty men that taught me about relationship. They didn't teach me about religion. I grew up in church, and church was always to me is like I went there and felt bad about myself. Like, 'cause you read all these commandments that you're not supposed to do. Aside from murder, I'm really good at all of them. You know what I mean?
Like this, is this a recipe for a good time, or what are we doing here?
So I always had so much guilt and so much shame every time we prayed or every time we went to church. And the only time I would pray was before football games or before I would eat. And so that never gave me solace. Like when you're by yourself and you're depressed, I don't want to go to a God that has a whole bunch of rules that will make me feel bad about myself. But to get back to these men that really introduced me to a relationship with God, a relationship with Jesus that allowed me to take that shame and that guilt that I felt from cheating on my girlfriend, fiance, who is now my wife, doing all the heinous things that I did, the drugs that I did, the cheating, the stealing, all these things that I did. I had so much guilt and so much shame built up around it. And then to make it all worse, you don't really know who you are. You retire from football and you get into media and you start creating relationships with people like you and all these other amazing people, and you just feel so inadequate. You feel so empty when you're around them, but they think you're amazing because of your resume, but you don't feel that way about you. And so it was when I really entered into a relationship with Jesus that to me things made more sense, and I never felt like I was alone anymore. I never felt like when you're in those empty moments, and when I talk about like celebrating the suffering that you're in, it's celebrating that, knowing that it's going to lead to something. It's like the season that you're in, Andy, right now, knowing that it's going to lead to something, knowing that this divorce is going to lead to you being able to live your best life, that your ex-wife is going to be able to live her best life. Yeah. Because ultimately that's what you want for the children of your kids.
It's what I want for her too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The children of your wife of your children.
The children of my kid. That better come way later down the road.
But that's what you want, man. Like, yeah. I know that it's not working out from a relationship standpoint, but I know that you love and honor her. Like, you show that by not speaking about that relationship in here. So this is for the listeners, but it's also for you, man, is knowing that this is going to lead to something beautiful. This is not something that's going to mark your life in a bad way. This is going to be freedom. This is going to be release. And this is going to allow you to selectively go through this adversity with your wife, with your son, with your family, and you're giving your son permission to live his best life, and you're leading with honor while you're doing this. And that's important because a lot of men, when things like this happen, they plant seeds to create division. And it says in Scripture, a house divided cannot stand. So granted, you're not married to her, but you still have a home with her. You still have a house with her.
And they'll always be our kids.
Exactly.
And I've had those conversations with all three of my kids. You know, like the legal description between the relationship your mom and I is changing, but I will always be your dad.
Right.
She will always be your mom. My one hard rule with them is since the day that I have left, and I wish I had done a better job about this when I was still there, but I will not speak negatively about her. I will not bring negativity into the conversation. And it already has led to, interesting in things that I think I have grown from. I mean, it really does.
You're going to inspire a lot of men through this process, though, man. That's what I'm saying, because you're building this capacity to go through what you're going through.
It's a pretty interesting mirror into yourself.
Way harder. I guarantee you this is way harder than anything else you've ever done.
From an emotional and mental perspective, for sure.
You can't control it.
Yeah.
When you're an operator, you can influence the result. When you're here, it can feel isolated, even like more isolated than the isolation that we're already in, because, man, I know your heart. I know you have a father's heart. I know you just want to be with them. So, man, I feel like I'm here just to remind you, man, that season that you're in is actually going to benefit your family. It's going to benefit your ex-wife. It's going to benefit you. But I think the amazing thing that you don't see the writing on the wall right now is the more that you show up with integrity, honor, and accountability for your son and for those kids and for your wife, that they can just see not what you're doing, but who you're becoming, because that's what we talked about earlier. Yeah. It's not about what you're being, or it's not about being, it's about becoming. And that's what this, I feel like this 2020, if we decide to look at it, for every person hearing our voice, is if we can look at it for what it is and celebrate in that suffering that will lead to endurance, and that endurance will lead to character, that character that is going to be revealed, not grown in you, but the character that's going to be revealed in you is going to give hope. That's the last part of that scripture, is going to give hope to other people, because nobody wants to go through what you're going through. And it's not like what you're going through, you can see the positive of it right now, because everything in the middle feels like failure. But I believe that this is something that's going to unlock you guys in a special way, to the point where you come and you sit and you do a podcast, you're freaking ready to do it. You're charged up to do it.
Yeah.
I know it's like doing a podcast or doing a TV show or playing a game when you're like,
I would rather be anywhere, literally anywhere other than right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you seek out that group of men, or was it an accidental encounter? Because it seems like it was definitely transformational for you.
Yeah, in the most major way, man. They were just guys at church, man. They were just guys at church. And I feel like when I retired from the NFL, I didn't realize how important that brotherhood was, because I had that brotherhood since I was 4. I was an athlete at 4.
Yeah, we should talk at least a little bit about how you got into the NFL in your career. I mean, how did that?
It's not that exciting.
But it's an interesting path.
Yeah, I touched the football for the first time when I was 14 years old, and
I'm gonna guess not to speak negatively about punters, but when you first touched a football, that your first thought wasn't, "I know what I want to do. I want to kick this ball."
Never.
That's what I was saying. The path to an NFL punter is an interesting one.
Nobody says at 12 years old, I'm going to go to the NFL and be a punter. It's going to be amazing. In the Super Bowl, I'm going to punt it to the 2-yard line, and Tom Brady's going to hate me. Oh, golly shucks. No. I want to catch a touchdown,
That's what I'm saying. So how did you? Yeah.
So I was on the soccer field. I was 14 years old. I was 108 pounds. This is in Terre Haute, Indiana. And the football coach, which was like the biggest deal in our school. It's Terre Haute, Indiana. Football was a big deal. And so when he came onto the soccer field, all the guys were like, "Oh, Wayne Staley's here." And so he comes up to the coach and he's like, "Hey, our kicker and our punter graduated and we don't have one. Do you have anybody that has a strong leg that you would let be our kicker?" And the coach outstretches his arm and goes, "Over there on that third field, I know he doesn't look like much, but he's a rocket for a leg." So the coach starts walking over and he gets across to the second field. And I'm hearing the story secondhand because obviously I didn't know this was going on. I'm just over there doing my thing, skinny little kid. And he gets across the second field and he looks back at the coach and he goes, "This guy?" I looked like... So anyway, so he has a conversation.
You were a beanpole.
Yeah. And he's like, "Hey, kick that ball for me." And I'm like, "Well, where do you want me to put it?" He goes, "Just kick it as far as you can." I kicked that thing to freaking Pluto. And he goes, "All right, you think you could kick that through uprights?" I go, "Yeah, no problem." So I come to practice the next day. He puts a helmet on me. I'm 108 pounds. I'm 5'8", so it's not like I'm like short. It looked like somebody put a golf ball on top of a tee and plopped that thing on my head. And my first ever live rep as a field goal kicker, Mike Canada was the long snapper. He's 275 pounds, and in high school, that's gigantic. He chewed tobacco during practice.
That's gigantic anywhere, Steve.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
maybe in your ex-cohort, yeah,
exactly.
350
275
pounds,
is like kind of normal, but the point is, he's like one of the biggest dudes I ever met, and he chewed tobacco during practice. This guy was hardcore.
Yeah.
So he snapped the ball. They put it down. I kicked it, and that ball never got 18 inches off the ground, and it hit Mike Canada in the left ass cheek so hard that it left an imprint, and he chased me off of the field. So my first ever field goal kicking extravaganza, I got chased off of the field, and that's how it all began for me, man. It wasn't like I kicked it and was like, "Oh, this guy's amazing." I was amazing, but I had to get over the nerves of like, I don't want to let all these other guys down. And so I kind of referenced it earlier about Bruce Lee, but he was one of my heroes growing up as a kid because he was able to, I actually just put something on Instagram earlier today. It was a quote that Bruce Lee had. I'll share it with you guys.
He was an interesting cat.
He's the best. "You will continue to suffer if you have emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing everything with logic. If words can control you, that means everyone else can control you. Breathe and allow things to pass." I feel like that's like a word for where you're at and where I'm at right now. More than likely where all these men are at that are hearing our voice right now is...
I feel like that's a good face tattoo.
Yeah. Come on.
Just
right across
ride
the
the forehead and just write down like Post Malone it right down the side of your face.
I want the forehead, dude. I got a big forehead, man.
Prime
Just
real estate.
tattoo it with some big old font on my forehead. But man, that to me is he's just telling you, you're going to continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. And I think that's the same thing on social media. That's the same thing on media, on TV. And it's the same thing on like Netflix. I mean, you see everything that's getting produced on Netflix. I was getting off the plane yesterday, arriving here in Montana, which I wouldn't think that Montana is like a haven for alternative lifestyles. I have no problems with people that are gay or any of that stuff.
Yep.
But my point is if we have an emotional reaction every time we see something that doesn't fit our lifestyle, you and I are going to be really upset everywhere we go. And I believe that's one of the most major problems right now in America.
Yeah.
Everybody's offended. Everybody's offended about everything.
And it makes your cup, the diameter, I believe, smaller. So that quote,
emotional reaction.
Yeah, that quote is also the key to surviving in combat. Yeah. Not having an emotional reaction to the things that are happening around you because A, you can't control it.
Right.
You can only control yourself. And you have to make logical decisions based off what's happening around you, not your emotional reaction to what's happening around you. I mean, that's actually deep at quite a few levels.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce Lee is deep, man. I mean, another quote that he says that I love, and it really kind of spoke to me because I was a punter, but don't be the guy that practices 10,000 kicks one time. Be the guy, and you live by this, be the guy that practices one kick 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And I believe for us as men just sitting right across from each other, that's what we do. You know what I mean? We pick something that we want to not just do, but something we want to become. And for me, in my life right now, I want to become a great husband. I want to become a great husband. I want to become a great leader. I want to become a great dad. And I know the best way for me to get to that point is self-leadership. You know, we all want to get better, become better leaders. And we go to, go and spend a week with a Navy SEAL to learn leadership skills and go to this thing and take this online masterclass and all these different things. But people fail at leading themselves. They want to go do all these other courses to learn NLP and these different tactics. But at the end of the day, they're poor leaders. Like, you can look at them and look at their body and look at how they live their life and look at their habits and tell that they're poor leaders.
Yeah.
And that was me. I was a poor leader of myself. And that's when I got into relationship, that's when things changed, because when I was alone, I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt understood. I felt like I had a purpose. I felt like when I die, I feel like there's something that's going to happen. I know God's going to ask me a question with all of the time and all the talents that I gave you, Steve. What did you do with them? I want to have a good answer.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the person, because I do believe I'm blessed. I do believe that God has given me gifts, and that every single person that's hearing this, he's done that for, but it's up to you to discover, develop, and deploy those gifts. And that's what I think life is about. And then the second thing God's going to ask me, when he takes me home, is, because of your life, how many people accepted me? How many people believed that I was the Son of God, that I was sent here to give men and families an example of how God wants us to live in relationship, and how God wants us to love, and how God wants us to be generous, and how God wants us to forgive our wives, and how God wants us to grow as leaders? That's when things started to make more sense to me, because how much more of our trophy case do we need to fill, bro? We're 40. We can do another 40 years of this. And guess what? I know exactly what you're going to do and I'm going to do. We're going to be fruitful with our time. We're going to be fruitful with our talents. But for what? I want to build God's kingdom here on earth. I want to tell everybody that I know about Jesus Christ and what he's done for me. And if you choose, to want to know a little bit more about that, shoot me a DM, man. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But at the end of the day, I could come on here and we can have all types of conversations about the great things that I've done and the supplements that I want to sell you, because I need to make more money to make up for my losses. But at the end of the day, man, you guys can go to WeatherfordFit.com to go get some gut probiotics and turn your health around. But just like we talked about earlier, man, unless you start to change the thing that you put into your life, the output is going to be the same. And so 3 years ago, I started to change what I put into my life. And it wasn't just going on Instagram and unfollowing people that made me feel inferior or intimidated or less than. It's more than that. It was about actually creating like a training blueprint game plan, like the same way you did to get better at something, to become a commercial playa, to be able to drive these $1 million planes. You had to be able to earn the skills, but then to trust yourself. And that's what I feel like I've been doing for these last 3 years is I'm on this vision quest, this spiritual journey to like make life make sense, because I feel super blessed that I've achieved a lot of things, but through achieving a lot of those things, I realized that those aren't the goal. It's in the becoming, not in the doing. Like, God created us to be human beings, not just human doings. And I feel like for type A men like you and I, being still,
I'm an
hard.
A-, B+.
No, you're a freaking A+, bro.
B+.
I'm still chasing you. You slow down so I feel a little bit better about myself.
Is the Weatherford 5, is that based off 5 kids?
That was the number that I wore.
I was going to say, because if it was based off the kids.
I know. Well, I actually told my wife, I'm like, do I need to change my Instagram tag now? Some nerd in his mom's basement is going to charge me $10,000 to get Weatherford 6.
Oh, they've got 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Somebody's just in there banking it.
I tried to buy @Steve the other day, and this dude has like...
That's just straight up @Steve?
@Steve.
That's a powerful one.
I know. So I've been DMing this dude, and he never messages back. He's got like 4,400 followers, and he only takes pictures of like trees and his dog. And I'm like, dude, I told him straight up, Steve, if you're listening to this, I will give you $10,000 if you give me
and a dog
Steve.
and a tree.
I will buy you a tree and a dog too. Matter of fact, my pit bulls just had puppies.
Man. Okay, I'm going back to the NFL because I'm fascinated. So you start kicking, field goal kicking first.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, is that what you specialize in?
Well, I got a scholarship to kick field goals. I had 6 field goals over 50 yards.
And were you punting at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I didn't get
role?
I didn't get a lot of attention for punting just because Terre Haute, Indiana, and back then it was VHS tapes. They're not going to like film your punts, time your punts, and then send it to the people. So like in order for you to know what a great punt was, you kind of like need to be there or watch the film.
Yeah.
But a 61-yard field goal is a 61-yard field goal.
For sure.
So it was really easy to gain attention for field goal kicking. I had quite a few college scholarships. I ended up going to the University of Illinois because they were going to let me run track there too. I was a decathlete. And because punting, if you guys haven't noticed, it's not like I'm a punter. I never wanted
4 plays per game.
I never wanted to. However, when the checks came in, I loved being a punter because you'd see the lineman walk in and like with a neck brace.
I was going to say the wear and tear and mileage has got to be a touch lower.
And the sick part is like I was making more money than some of those linemen, because they were like, well, they were young guys, and if you get a really good punter and a really good kicker, like one of my good buddies just signed a contract extension with the Giants, kicker making $4 million a year.
Are you serious?
$4 million a year. So if you break that up over 16 games, because we get 16 checks during the season, that's $400,000 a game.
That's $100,000 a kick. Well, actually, slightly under if it's 4.6 plays.
So point is, man, send that 17-year-old down to Uncle Steve for a summer. I'll teach him how to kick some field goals, man.
He loves soccer too. He's got a foot on him.
I'm serious. If he wants to learn how to play, it is. I promise you, it's not too late. If he can kick a soccer ball, he can kick a football. That'd be fun.
My mother wouldn't let me play football because she thought it was too dangerous.
Same.
I was like, I'll show you.
I was 108 pounds, dude. She was right.
I was probably I weighed 150 when I graduated high school. 6 foot 150.
Yeah, I gained weight really fast. I graduated high school at 220, and I never took steroids. I was really proud of that.
Yeah. Well, you're a big boy though too.
Yeah, I went from 5'8" to about 6'2". I'm 6'3" now, but yeah, I went from 108 to 220.
So how was the draft like?
I didn't get drafted. I mean, I kind of knew I was. Well, I mean, you're a punter.
Don't they have to draft you too? Or do they just basically walk in and like, here's your contract?
Yeah, they're like, hey, well, after the draft is over, then they'll have 6, 7, 8 teams message you or
I was actually going to say, I can't remember, not that I've watched a lot of the drafts, but I don't ever remember seeing a kicker draft.
No, that's typically in the 6th or 7th round when everybody is drunk. So, yeah, my draft day was really uneventful. And I kind of knew it was going to be that way. I ended up signing with the New Orleans Saints, and I was competing with a Pro Bowler, Mitch Berger, when I first came out. And man, dude, it was such a blessing. He pulled his groin the first day of training camp, and I blew it up. It's kind of one of those things, man, where opportunity meets hard work, man. I was prepared. I was prepared for that moment, and they had 50 punters in preseason that year, and I finished number 1, and I still got cut because after training camp was over, the Pro Bowl punter said I'm healthy, and so they cut me, and I went to Atlanta to try out for the Falcons. Just got done with the workout. I was at that time, Jim Mora was the coach, so I was about to sit down with Jim Mora, and my phone rang, and it was the Saints. It was their general manager, and I thought he was just calling to say, hey, good luck, you did a really good job. But he's like, hey, where are you at? I'm like, oh, I'm in Atlanta. I just got done working out for the Falcons. He's like, you didn't sign anything yet? Long story short, the punter that said his groin was okay came out for the first day of practice.
Perhaps wasn't as okay.
It wasn't okay, but you want to know how smart this dude was? Is if you're on the roster opening day and you're a veteran, your entire salary for the year, $1 million for him, was guaranteed if he was on opening day roster. So he just hustled him.
Nice chess move.
Yeah, he got $1 million. Oh, I got another good story for you. So you want to talk about a chess move? So this is my first training camp ever. And it was coming down to final cuts, and I kind of thought maybe I might make the team, but I thought it was maybe a 50-50 coin flip because I was doing everything that I could, but this guy was like the best in the league. So, it's like cutting Tom Brady because the young guy's doing good. You just don't do that. So the night before final cuts, I'm walking, and we were in a college dorm. I'm walking through the hallway, and everybody's kind of like on pins and needles. Most nights, everybody's laughing, whatever.
Some pretty life-altering decisions are being made that night.
You're about to make $1 million or maybe $10 million or nothing. So it's pretty somber night, and everybody's nervous because if you show up at your locker the next day and there's a note in there, you got to go see the coach. So
probably not for a high five and a playbook.
No, it's actually bring me your playbook and leave. So
thanks for coming out. You're going to need to find a new place to stay.
And that's truly how it is. I mean, you would talk about seeing some men that look like their whole life just got ended, because the reality is some of these men, just like you, they're good. And they're just on the wrong team at the wrong time, or maybe the wrong era, like fullbacks. Fullbacks, there's no fullbacks in the NFL anymore. But back in the day, fullbacks were a commodity. We just passed the ball too much. So it could be just be the wrong era. But point is, I'm walking through this hallway, and I look over, and a guy that's been in the league for 11 years, and he knows he's going to get cut tomorrow because there's a young guy that's just playing really well. So he knows he's going to get cut. He says, hey, Rook, come in here. He goes, I need you to do something for me. And he's sitting there at a table, and it's a college dorm room. So he's sitting at like this tiny little college desk, 360 pounds. He's like, Rook, come in here. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I need you to slam this on my foot. He's like, what? I look over. He's got an 80-pound dumbbell that he took out of the weight room, and he wants me to drop it on his foot. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's sitting there drinking Jack Daniels. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. He's like, come on, man. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I had no idea why somebody would want you to do that. So I like scampered out of there real quick. And then about 5 minutes later, he found one of our other teammates that he put his foot, like you open the door and you put his foot in there, and he found somebody to take the door and slam his foot like 6 times to break his foot.
Yeah.
So when he wakes up the next morning and his pink slip is in his locker because he knows it's going to be there, he's going to go on injured reserve because they can't cut you when you're injured. So he injured himself and then got his $1 million, and he had a policy, and I won't say his name because he'd have to pay the money back. He had a $5 million policy that if he got a career-ending injury, it would pay him $5 million. If I was smart, Andy,
some people play checkers, some people play chess.
I'd have told that dude, give me $100,000, I'll do whatever you want. Because I didn't know whether or not I was going to make a team.
$100,000? Yeah, I would have been like 10% of this and the policy.
Yeah. At that time, I had never gotten a check, Andy, with a comma in it, ever.
How does that feel like the first time you get one?
Oh, it was like right when we first got like camera phones. I took a picture of it and sent it to all my buddies from college. I'm like, bro, I'm loaded.
Did you immediately go out and buy a Porsche?
It was like it was $14,000. No,
that's a ton of money, though.
I had to pay my dad back for the wedding ring that I bought for my wife because we were engaged, and then you had to pay your agent. By the time it was all said and done, I think I got about $4,000 out of that first check.
What do most agents take? 20?
3%.
3?
Yeah, 3% for sports agents. I don't know where
in the hell I just got 20 from, because that would be a great agent.
You got 20 from Hollywood agents. You got 20 from marketing agents. So, example, let's say Killcliff calls me and like, hey, we want to do a deal. $100,000. We're going to sponsor all of your podcast episodes for a year. Sometimes they come straight to you and you don't have to give anybody a cut. But when I was in the NFL, there would be guys going out and looking for those deals for me. So if they go out and get me a $100,000 deal or $5,000 deal, they just made $1,000. So it makes sense for them to go out there and get as many deals as you can for us. And you get 20%. To me, it's like 20% of something I didn't have before. Totally good deal.
Yeah, gravy.
But 3% for sports agents, and the way those sports agents really make a lot of money is getting a lot of clients, but getting the bigger clients and then getting those clients deals.
Example, 3% of a massive number is still a massive number.
Yeah, $100 million deal, it's $3 million. And a $100 million deal is not like that crazy. They're happening every other week.
To me, it's a little crazy.
It is. I mean, baseball is crazy. $300 million. And the difference is, Andy, it's guaranteed when it's baseball. It's guaranteed when it's basketball. It's guaranteed when it's soccer. It's guaranteed when it's hockey. And it's football. It's week to week, cuz. I mean,
is there any way you can get it to be guaranteed? Probably at a much lower dollar rate?
Well, if you have leverage, a quarterback has leverage. So that's why you see these quarterbacks get $120 million deals with 100 of it guaranteed. Because if they're like, well, if you don't give it to me guaranteed, then I'm out.
Yeah, I'll go shop somewhere else.
Punters, not so much leverage.
They're like, Steve, we don't know how to tell you this, but there are exactly 1,000 people in line out the door trying to get your job, so take it or leave it, buddy.
Yeah. And it's the truth. So
are the pros what you thought they would be? Well, I mean, what was that experience like, becoming a professional athlete? I mean, I'm assuming there's travel involved.
Yeah.
Just the whole ecosystem.
I think it's a big money game. That's the one thing that I realized that I didn't really realize before is it's a business. You know, there are franchise owners that would like to win, but it ain't important. Then there are guys that want to win. Jerry Jones, he wants to win. He also wants to run business.
Yeah.
John Mara, the Giants owner. He wants to win.
You were at the Giants for the majority of your career, right?
4 years. Yeah, 4.5 years.
Okay.
So I was there for 4.5. I was with New Orleans for 2.5. I was with Jacksonville for a year, and I was with Kansas City for a year, and then the Jets for 2.
Okay. So, yeah.
Skipped around the block. So
Yeah.
I got to see KC. I got to see Jacksonville. I got to see New Orleans. I got to see the Jets, and I got to see the Giants. And from a culture standpoint, the Giants were just far and above anybody else. Just, I think it's because, leadership, but they've been a franchise since like the 30s, and so there's just a lot of rich history there, and a lot of culture that impacts the community off of the field, which is something I thought was really cool because it's great to win, but how are you leveraging that to change anybody else's life? And they did the best job out of all the NFL franchises, in my opinion, to make it impact people further than just the game.
Would Eli talk a lot of shit before you guys played the Colts?
Never.
Not even when it was his brother?
He never talked, ever.
So I did a commercial for Reebok years ago, and Peyton and Eli were there, and I think I heard them combined say 3 words.
Yeah.
They were so quiet.
Peyton is really funny. Eli it was the craziest thing. I used to have lunch with him every Friday because we would get out of work at about 1 o'clock on Friday, and as soon as practice was over, everybody left really quick. But because in my mind, I didn't belong to be there, I always did extra work, even as a punter.
Yeah.
So we would stick around, and I'd do some weight room stuff, some acupuncture, cold tub, sauna and stuff. And then I would always end up in the cafeteria at about 2:30, and that's always when Eli would finish all of his film, and we would sit in there. It wasn't never we planned to be there at the same time, but we always ended up eating lunch together on Friday. And every once in a while, somebody would join us. But when it was just him and I, he would dominate the conversation. You've been here with me for about an hour and a half. I talk a lot, right?
Yeah.
I have no problems carrying the conversation. But when it was Eli, he would talk the entire time. Funny stories, movie quotes, all that. But as soon as somebody would sit down, even if he was best friends with that other person,
Zip it.
nothing. It was crazy. But he was a really, really good leader. And the one thing I admired about him was, I would believe, one of the character traits that would make a great soldier would be his ability to stay composed when everybody around him is
critical.
losing their head.
Absolutely critical.
Fourth quarter, he was incredible.
And isn't it interesting to watch that permeate through everybody that's around there? How much
culture?
But just to see, and so for us, a lot of the times we were not physically next to the people we were working for, and oftentimes we're very disaggregate, onesie twosies, off pretty deep. You got your own compound, and there are some emotional moments, some tenuous moments, and you'd hear a guy come over the radio. It's just like it is largely involved in the same situation that you are involved in, the same risk to life, and they just cool, calm, and collected over the radio, and it just deflates everybody.
Gives so much confidence to everybody else.
And I've seen it the other way too, where the guy's screaming on the radio, and I've seen this a lot on. Not to speak negatively about law enforcement, but I've seen it where they'll show a chase or afterwards where the person is calling in and their emotional state is escalating, and everybody who is responding to that situation, their emotional state is escalating as well. Just that power of influence that you have and the control of your emotions.
Self-leadership, man.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
And practice and constantly maintaining an awareness of yourself. So actually staying, again, logic over emotion. The ability to look from above. I mean, Jocko describes it as watching yourself from 6 feet away, which is, it's not easy to do. Damn, I was hoping that he would sit there and just talk smack about his brother when they played the Colts.
Never. Self-awareness. That's what I'm hearing you say when you were speaking just now, is like critical
self-awareness.
Well, knowing where you're at, because how can you and I lead other people, either in combat or a family or a business, unless we have awareness to where we're at, because we have to have awareness to where we're at to lead ourselves, to lead other people. And that's one thing that I don't know if Eli had a ridiculous level of self-awareness that he knew when he was his emotions were getting away from him, or if he's just built that way. But that's one thing I noticed he did really well, and I would assume that soldiers do really well, is they practice getting out of. I mean, that's
why the training is so difficult. They're in an artificial environment trying to replicate the stress.
Right.
And done properly, I think you could match and sometimes exceed the stress of real-world environment.
For sure.
Done improperly, it's a waste of time. And then you see these evolutions where everybody is failing, and it's like the point of the evolution is to fail, not to learn, which to me is completely pointless. Everything should be targeted. But, critical self-awareness when it comes to leaders, I always use a chessboard analogy. There's 64 squares on a board, red and white or red and black, or whatever your game may be. And, people their first day on the job, they don't even know that they're in a square, which is okay. But eventually you'll see, oh, I'm in a square and there's some other squares around you. And that's still not enough for a leader. A leader needs to see their square, every square on their team side, and then every square on the competition or the enemy's team side, and then how their pieces are arrayed. But when people get lost, the first thing you got to do is look down and see where you are. You got to find where your feet are planted before
What's my 20?
Because if you don't have that, you're like, hey, we need to move. I'm like, well, move from where? Like, it's actually a pretty critical thing to know not only where the enemy is or competition, but where you are. That's the starting point for it all. And that's, again, that critical self-awareness.
Yeah, it's vision.
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess in order for you to have vision for yourself, you have to first figure out where you're at.
Yeah.
In order to cast vision. And if we look at like the 7 days of creation in Genesis, the first day God created light so we could have vision. And the second day God created the atmosphere so we could create culture. The third day God created the land that we could stand on so we can create structure for our lives. And then the next day God created the stars and the water so we could have order to the structure that he created. And it just makes total sense to me. Like when you look and you try to break down like really great leaders and what makes them great leaders.
It's actually very hard.
Yeah.
But I can point out people who suck. Like, he did
So quick.
Yeah. And you watch a good leader, and this happened to me all the time. I would just take notes. I have volumes of
They're
notebooks.
not neon lights though. The
No,
leadership moves.
you
that
sit
they
back
make,
and you're like, how did you do that? Because the train wreck, you're like, ooh. I can see the train wreck coming usually about a half a dozen steps away.
Sure.
And I can see the bad communication, the self-centered individual, the person who's just trying to bark orders instead of empower. I'm like, oh,
the ego, right?
Oh, daddy, here we go.
Right.
Because then all you have to do is crumble that person by overwhelming them with the task. And since they didn't empower any of their people, the entire team just spins off the rails. And then you watch a really good leader crush a hard training scenario. And if they task you to sit down and, write the 5 things that person did that made that possible, you're sitting there scratching your head because it's almost invisible.
It's like a ninja.
But so powerful.
Yeah. And they never seem like the people that are like barking or like super high energy.
Well, there's a time and place to raise your voice.
Right. But being a high energy guy doesn't make you a great leader.
It can actually really wear down your people.
Right.
Because they'll become accustomed to that baseline. Because if you're already a high energy person and then something happens that's critical, you have to be a higher energy person
to overcome it.
Yeah, to overcome it, as opposed to just being pretty baseline. I mean, the best leaders that I ever worked with, regardless of what was happening around them, their tone of voice didn't change.
Tonality.
Yeah, and there is a time and place to raise your voice. Sometimes we did have to yell versus use the radio. Another one was I saw for some of the best leaders, they never ran. Regardless of what was going on. Well, and there's a couple reasons. One, that lets the people around you know that, hey, I'm in control of the situation.
Got this.
But 2, why rush to a decision point? Why cheat yourself of time that you might need in a critical decision point? Leadership is gained or ability is gained through experience. And when you're more junior or you're younger, you need as much time as humanly possible. So why rush junior or younger people to a decision point when they don't have to be? Because you can force them to fail just because of lack of knowledge and experience.
That's good. Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is intention and strategy.
For sure.
Is what's the come from? Like, what's your intention to be a leader? Because I feel like that is kind of the ultimate predictor of how you're going to lead. Is why do I want to be a leader? Do I want to be a leader so people know my name? Do I want,
let's be honest, there's plenty of those in the SEAL teams too.
Right.
The best leaders I ever worked with, SEAL community. The worst leaders I ever worked with, SEAL community. Yeah, there were people who are like, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a pretty big deal. And I'm the boss of you, and you're going to do what I say. And people in the back of their minds are like, well, we're going to murder this person overseas. But generally what would happen is the training pipeline would get rid of him, and you wouldn't have to
He'll
worry
get filtered
about it.
out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Because I feel like as a SEAL and as a professional athlete, a lot of our strategy is given to us.
Yes.
So we don't necessarily get to write the playbook. We don't necessarily get to be the ones that create our operation protocol, but we're the ones that control our attitude, our effort, and our intention. And I feel like the third one, the intention, is really what elevates leaders. Is, there's the subdivisions of leadership, and one of your COs might put somebody into that spot, but they'll get filtered out over time.
Or murdered by their peers.
Exactly, because their intention is not congruent to the mission. It's about them. It's not about the mission. And I've seen that happen a lot of times with extraordinary, talented athletes and leaders too.
And
they
the
make
intention,
it about themselves.
Poor intention leads often to poor execution. Those two are very intrinsically tied, I would say.
That's good.
Yeah, it's leadership is not easy. And it's another thing, just like personal development, that I've heard you talk about, where it's about this struggle and rejoicing and embracing the struggle. There's no arrival.
Yeah.
I have never once in my life sat down and was like, I'm there. I'm the leader that I want to be. I could just write a column that's 5 times longer of the things I need to work on versus the things that I'm doing well. And I guess the goal would be to get as many of those over in the other column, although they never seem to really move over there.
Right.
You know? But if there's no arrival, and if you can accept that, I think you're better positioned.
It's the becoming, man.
Yeah.
You know, like this whole thing, this whole life is a process. I mean, the people that you and I meet that are 70, 80, 90 years old, they don't talk about the things that are so important to us now. Like the things that are so important to you and so important to me, those people never talk about those things. And so I just want to be proactive in my life and proactive in my legacy, that not just a sense of urgency, but a sense of intention. That like the things that I'm doing, like sitting down here with you, you know, flying thousands of miles to be up here.
I was going to say, you came up here, in your post, you were talking about writing a book to solidify exactly what you're talking about, right? Leave that legacy on paper.
Yeah.
How long have you been kicking around that idea?
I think kind of like the same thing as like when I was a little kid. Everybody wanted to be in the pros. Kind of think the natural evolution of retiring from the NFL. And I think everybody's like, oh, maybe I should write a book. But I never really got really serious about it until this year, when God really placed it on my heart, like what my mission assignment is, you know, like what my purpose is. I filled up the trophy case like quite a bit. I mean, there's other people my age that have filled it up more, but I filled it up enough to know that playing the game of life like that is not going to work for me. It's not going to change things for me. And so 3 years ago, I recalibrated what purpose meant. I recalibrated what impact meant. I recalibrated what fulfillment was for me. It's not, like you said, it's not a destination, but knowing that I'm intentionally and strategically in that process, I know that the impact that God is going to have through my life and through my struggles of addictions to drugs, addictions to porn, addictions to all these other things that like nobody wants to talk about as a man, but those are the things that hold all of us back. It's the shame and the guilt of looking at that thing on the internet, or putting that powder up your nose, or smoking that blunt, or whatever your vice is, or whatever the thing is that you do when you're triggered, when you feel abandoned, when you feel rejected. Like that is my purpose, is to go speak to those men, to let them know that they're not broken, they're not beaten, they're not defeated. They're in a down season right now. They're in a valley right now. And if you can rejoice in the suffering that you're in, man, it's just going to lead to hope for other men. And that's what I believe my mission assignment is right now, is to be a hope dealer for other men, a hope dealer in their marriages, a hope dealer. I mean, I had no idea you were going through what you're going through in your personal life, but I know if that's not the reason, that's one of the reasons that God made this happen, you know, because we both wanted to do this. But this interview would have been different if I would have stayed in San Diego and been like, hey, dude, let's just do this over Zoom. A whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But your relationship,
so less impactful though.
Yeah, your relationship to me is important, and I don't know why. And I feel like that's one of the things about this lifetime that I feel like a lot of people struggle with, and I struggle with too, is the why. We always want to know the why. You know, like when I explain things to my wife, for her to follow my leadership, she has trouble with that. You know, and that's one of the things that we're working on in counseling is I'm the leader of the family and I want to be treated that way. But my communication style with my wife is broken. I just assume because I create success and results in these other areas that you should just trust me. And I think she does trust me, but she wants me to be more patient with her to explain the why. Mm-hmm. And if she can understand the why, she doesn't even necessarily have to agree with the why, but if she can understand the why, then that's going to make it a team versus two roommates. And there's been a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of years, but there's been a lot of nights that I felt like a roommate.
I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
That led into the decision
right
that I've talked about. Yeah, it's, you know, explaining the why and taking the time, you know, there's value to allowing people to process and be heard.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to agree, but there's certainly value to that. And it will bring it into a more cohesive relationship, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like wives and I feel like just people in general, like my friends like you, like when you sit here with me, there's 4 things that are going to make you want to be present here. Is if you're seen, is if you're heard, is if you're supported, and if you feel loved. Those are the 4 things I believe that as a husband and a leader that we get to get better at. We get to get better at making sure that our wife or our friends, that their voice feels heard. Because we're so good at giving directive because we're leaders. But how good are you and I at listening and giving space to other people that maybe haven't achieved what we've achieved or are as type A as we are? And my wife is not that way. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. But I just assume that she should just trust me. And that's why, and I definitely won't call it a crossroads because we're going to fight this thing out and we're in a good spot. But point is like, I want to get in the arena with this pain. I want to get in the arena with some of the things that maybe she is kind of pressed down and not brought to me during our NFL career because she didn't want to bring things to me that would maybe negatively affect my performance. And more than likely, probably pretty similar to you. Your wife probably didn't take
exactly what I was saying. And the thing is those issues, you can put a Band-Aid on that, but it doesn't deal with the underlying impacts.
Festers, bro. Yeah. And so I believe that the more you and I talk off air, the more that we're going to relate like so much to our story.
Seems like they're defined by their similarities, not by their differences.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, man, I'm just praying and believing for you and praying and believing for me and all the other men that are listening to this right now and it's not just on you, man. Like this is a partnership. It's, you get to make improvements and you get to give space to your wife, but it's a team game. So I don't want any men to have any guilt or shame about the conversation that we're had. This conversation is to give you permission. It's to give you permission to take action in your life. It gives you permission to take a really serious look about who you are, not just the results that you're creating. Like when you're by yourself, who are you? Like, what is your identity? Like, what are your core principles? What is your mission statement? I think it's easy for us as businesses to like, all right, well, what's our mission statement? What are our
easy
principles?
For a business, for like as
but for
a person,
marriage, yeah,
or even as an individual,
for family, yeah, for an individual. Like I created something. I don't know how much time we have, but I could talk on this. How much time do we have?
30 minutes.
Okay,
fire
that's
away.
Plenty. So about 3 years ago, when I really got into relationship with God instead of hiding from him, and I think the best way to relate that is like if you wreck your car, you don't want to call your dad. He's like, he's gonna freaking, when you're 16, my dad's gonna freaking kill me.
Yeah.
I did that. I know what it's like. But what would and that's how I viewed religion. It's like, I made a mistake. I don't want to bring it to him. I don't want anybody to know about
punitive.
It. Right. And now I've entered into a relationship where I get to receive. I get to receive forgiveness. I get to receive peace. I mean, peace I feel like is the most eluding thing for us, is to know that who we are and what we're doing is right. Not like right and wrong, but like what we're supposed to be doing, like how God created us to love and how God created us to encourage and how God created us to be disciplined. Like those are fruits of the Spirit. Discipline is not something that isn't in the Bible. Perseverance is in the Bible. Discipline is in the Bible. Generosity is in the Bible. Faithfulness is in the Bible. There's 12 fruits of the Spirit. And I believe if we can look at those and not for shame or guilt, but just to see the gaps in who we are, it's about the becoming. And now you have something else that you get to practice on. For me personally, I'm terrible about being on time. I was even late today. I said I'll be there about 9:45-ish. Here I roll up at 9:54. Granted, it's 9 minutes.
Yeah.
But that is a personal struggle that I have. And it's not that I don't really appreciate your time. And it's not that I don't value you as a person. And sometimes it might come off as that, as when people are late. But for me, I'm trying to get too many things done. I'm FaceTiming with my wife and checking in with the kids and, making sure that I get an Instagram post out. And, every Monday morning I teach a mindset devotional out of the Bible every Monday morning. So I do that. So my point to mention all that to you and to circle it back to a personal contract. 3 years ago, I looked at my life and I looked at the men that I admired the most, like the Andy Stumps and my dad and the guys that I just felt like, man, not that they have it all figured out, but what are the character attributes of these different heroes that I have in my life? And what are they? And I boiled it all down, all of these different people that I admired, like Bruce Lee and Steve Prefontaine and my mentor now, Keith Craft, is integrity, honor, and accountability. And so every day that I wake up, and this is still active every single day. This isn't something I started doing 3 years ago and then I got off of it. Every single day that I wake up, it's not some super mystical morning routine. I just look in the mirror and I remind myself who I am, not because of what I did yesterday, but I remind myself I am a man of integrity. I am a man of honor, and I am a man of accountability. I had a breakdown in my accountability when I was 9 minutes late to meet you here. Now, granted, I said 9:45-ish, and the reason
you throw the ish on there.
The reason I threw the ish in there is because I know myself. And I knew I had enough time to get there, but I think that's just kind of like a thing I do to protect myself.
It just rounds the edge a little bit.
Yeah. It's kind of like having a little whiskey before you do it.
Just prep the battlefield.
But point is like I know I struggle with that. And I looked at all these different men in my life and I said, man, if I could just have 3 character attributes that if I just focus on these, I know that they're going to unlock every other area of my life. Where integrity, if you want to build your body, incredibly important. Accountability, incredibly important. You want to build a business, same thing. If I want to be a great husband, integrity, honor, and accountability, just like you, dude, saying like, hey, I'd love to have this conversation, but because this person does have an opportunity to talk back to me, I honor them and I choose not to speak. That's honor. And so that will give your relationship 6 months from now, a year from now, the seeds that it needs in order to produce an incredible harvest, meaning an incredible relationship with your ex-wife to where you guys are co-parenting in the most supernatural way, because that's what God wants for us. He doesn't want us to have natural successes. He wants us to have supernatural successes. He wants transformation to happen in his name, because if we're able to create it, where's the glory in God? There's no glory in it for God if we did it all ourselves. And you and I are so good at doing it. But when I partnered with him, and now everything I do, I don't just have a good business, I have a God business. I don't just have a marriage, I have a God marriage, because God is in the center of everything. And so when it comes to communication and when it comes to perseverance or sacrifice, I'm leading myself with the Bible and relationship with God. And because of that, my marriage is being transformed, because I'm not making sacrifices to be with her. I'm not changing who I am to try to fit with her. And I feel like that's kind of a struggle we all go through, is like, how do I change me to fit her mold?
Or grow together.
Right. And I think the only
independently, but also at, you know what I mean? Development and growth for both people, but at the same time, they're a conjoined pair.
Right. I don't feel like, at least for my friends and my brothers, we don't put nearly as much intention and strategy behind that growth, or behind that, even that maintenance. If we would just want to call it maintenance, like a date night every Friday would just be maintenance, just an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to communicate, an opportunity to be seen, heard, loved, and supported. And so it started for me this year. I know I'm going off on a little bit tangent here, but it started for me this year and really kind of like dating my wife again and doing Fridays. And there were days that we would go out on Friday and we wouldn't speak for the first hour. But we were disciplined, man. We're going to do this regardless. We just sit there and we don't look at each other. I'll just sit over here, chew tobacco, and drink coffee and not look at you. But we're going to freaking date night. And I'm the leader of this, and we're going to do it. So if we want to make the best out of us, let's make the best out of us. But we're going to do this. Because I know that the more that we lean into this, like going to the gym, the days that you don't want to go to the gym are the days that you get the most progress.
The days that you don't want to be on the mats doing jiu-jitsu or the roll, it's even, you can break it down even further. There are people who you know are going to smash you. Mm-hmm. You're like, but if I don't look at him, maybe I'll just go over here. Mm-hmm. The person you need to roll with is the one that's going to smash you. Yeah. When you get that visceral gut, like, I don't want to do this, it's like you should explore that. Yeah. That's the path.
That's the breakthrough.
That's the path for growth, whether it's in jiu-jitsu or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Go at those things, not away from them, which is so easy to say and so hard to do.
There's so many different decisions that you get to make during the day, and a lot of them, the fact of the matter is, men, we choose comfort, man. We let our emotions.
Some do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know I do, man, and that's my flesh. I lived 36 years a certain type of way, and now when I wake up in the morning, and it's been 3 years on this, I guess I would call it a training protocol, but 3 years on this and I still fight my flesh. You know, like example, I'm at my buddy's house last night. My wife's not around. I got an iPad. It would be so easy for me to go to Pornhub.com, rub one out, and go to sleep. That would be easy. Nobody would know about that. But that would affect my ability to show up the way that I want to show up this morning, because I'd have shame and guilt about that.
Yeah.
And I know that it would be that shame and that guilt from making that, because I made a commitment to not let that be a part of my life anymore, because it really created issues in my intimacy of my marriage. So I've planted my flag that I'm not going to go there anymore. But there were times where after I made that commitment, I still fell back. And, you know, I couldn't tell you how many times I tried to stop doing drugs or watching porn, because that was the thing that when I felt sad, when I felt rejected, when I felt lonely, you could go in the bathroom, put something up your nose, or watch a video for 15 minutes, and you would get that dopamine and that serotonin release in your brain.
Yeah.
And for that moment, you're like, I feel better. And then you look at yourself, I'm like, man, I'm disgusting. I got 4 daughters, and I'm watching garbage like this, when I really should be going down and having conversations with my wife and letting her know that the marriage that we're in right now, I don't stand for it. This is not okay. It's not your fault. This is our fault, but let's do the work. And for a lot of years, man, my wife was unwilling to like get in that arena because she was hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I did some heinous things younger, like when we've been together since we were 17. Think about that.
Yeah.
I was with her in my teens, my 20s, my 30s, and soon to be 40s. So yeah, it makes sense that a woman that's been with me for that long is going to want to know the why behind a decision, because some of the decisions that I used to make weren't best for the family. They weren't best for me, and they weren't best for the marriage. And so when I tell you it's been kind of a spiritual vision quest, but it's been a different type of personal development for me, because we've had marriage issues in the past, but I've always tried to make changes in myself to fit what I felt like she needed, instead of coming together and writing a mission statement for a mother flipping family. Not for my business. My business can kick rocks. This is my legacy, dude. My business will come and go. More than likely in 3 or 4 years, I won't have this supplement company anymore. Mm-hmm. Hopefully in 2 years, I'll sell it. But my point to that is that won't bring me fulfillment. So for me to go hide in the bathroom away from my problems instead of doing the work with my wife, knowing that in 2 years it can be like supernatural. And when I say supernatural, not because I just did the work, because God was a part of it. And God, through repetitions, scrubbed away the residue. Because when I decided I'm never going to watch porn again, and I made a declaration, I actually talked to my wife about it. I'm like, this won't live in our house anymore. It won't live in our marriage anymore, but I need support. This is how I need you to help support me through this. But getting through something like that with someone was the only reason that it was ever a possibility, because I tried to beat it by myself for so long.
Like you said, try to go through buds by yourself.
You can't do it. And that was something that I just couldn't beat until I partnered with God and my wife. And I had to make somebody in heaven connected to me and somebody here for accountability here on earth, because I don't care how holy you are or how much you meditate in prayer. God created us to need him. God created us to need relationship with him. And when we don't do it that way, that's when our life is like this. And so I still have downs and I still have massive ups, but my downs, they don't last that long, because I have awareness to it. And I also understand how to get out of it, how to get out of that depression, how to get out of that overwhelm, how to get out of that shame and that guilt.
Do you, I've heard Ryan talk about this, Mickler. Do you think that men and masculinity are under attack in the modern day?
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, marriage is under attack. I mean, they just
the nuclear family.
They let anybody. They let anybody do it now. So, I mean, not to get into that a big discussion on it, but God created marriage for a man and a woman. Period. You know, I'm all for equal opportunities, and you guys want to have an employment where we have employment. That's great, but that's something that was created just for us, for a man and a woman. If you want to have a partnership and a life partner, that's fine. But you're asking me, is masculinity under attack? Dude, I feel like faith is under attack. I feel like our country is under attack. I feel like integrity is under attack. And I feel like what the devil is doing right now is just confusing everybody. It's just the spirit of confusion to even the people that know they're Republican because of the narrative and social media and TV, they'll conform people to vote a certain type of way because those people can't create their own ideals because they're being transformed by everything that's going on right now, and masculinity included. I mean, if you look at
confusion's an interesting one. It's go back to my old job. If you can create confusion with your enemy, you can maneuver. I don't know if people realize
it's real good.
That's where movements are made, is when you're looking over here and somebody slides. You know what I mean? Like that's
sleight of hand.
That's what a smart enemy actually does. Is they will intentionally confuse you or obfuscate what they're doing, so they can make moves without being watched. It's super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also like to our daughters, also, there's a confusion there. If we allow them to consume whatever it is that they want to consume, they're going to be conformed, and the masculinity of what they think men want. They think men want them to just twerk on TikTok, and that's how they find a boyfriend or a husband. That's what they're watching, though.
I know.
They're being told the more sexual that you can make yourself and the more sexual you can move your body, the more popular and successful you're going to become. That's scary,
the more
dude.
Feedback you'll get.
Yeah, more attention.
Views, the more likes, and
the
all
more
of that
money.
shit, irrelevant, all of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's. Oh man,
I'll
just beat a young man to death who treats my daughter like that.
I agree with you, but what would life be like if that won't happen because we're so intentional and strategic about how we raise them at home? I'm not saying we're going to do it perfect.
Yeah.
Because there's no handbook for it. I mean, technically there is. It's called the Bible. But you actually, at least for me, I need somebody to help show me inside of that book with 7,436 promises from God, which one of those promises works for the season that I'm in right now, where I'm going through a divorce, where I feel so distant and disconnected from my son. And I know that he loves me, and I know that we have love together, but I'm hurt right now. Like, where are the promises that give me peace? Where are the promises that let me know that my tomorrows are going to be brighter than my today? And I need people to help me do that. In order for me to come on a podcast like this and speak my truth, I have to understand what my truth is. I have to understand.
The same as seeking a counselor for a marriage, though, or an individual.
Self-awareness to find out, kind of like what you said with the chessboard. Let me figure out what freaking square I'm on, okay? I know I can't lead my wife right now.
If you don't know what square you're on, I mean, there's no problems that can be fixed from there. It has to begin right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think, I feel like I've said the word leader so many times, but the greatest leaders.
It's a good word.
It is a good word. The greatest leaders meet people where they're at. You know, and I feel like really good speakers and really good marketers say the right words, but they're not invested. You know, you've had coaches and you've had COs and teammates that, regardless if they were above you or older or younger, they were able to get you to do something or become something by understanding where you're at, by seeing you and hearing you. And once you see and hear somebody, you can understand where they're at. And that's one of the areas that I'm working on is asking the right questions. And
leadership is not about putting together the perfect team that you want. No. It's about taking the team that you have and wherever they are and whoever they are, getting them to the desired end state. And that another difficult issue about leadership is that people are influenced in different ways. Yeah. Some are more so by words. You know, They are very driven by, they'll hear words. Of course, those words have to be commensurate with your actions. You can't say you need to be a person of integrity and then be having incongruency. You know, you're talking about the value of relationships and then you're off having 6 or 7 affairs while your coworkers are looking at you like, okay, we're out. But other people are more driven by action and the combination of those things. And I mean, you're never going to have a perfect team ever.
Right.
What you need to do is figure out as a leader where you want to go. Actually, first, where are you?
Yeah, right.
Then where you want to go, and then bridge the gap. And that's why it's so tough.
I actually don't think you're wrong by casting vision first.
They kind of go hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand, but I think before you take action.
Yeah, before you maneuver one step, you need to know both.
For sure. And I think in order for you and I to be really excited about what's about to happen, it's got to start with vision.
Yes.
You know, because if it doesn't start with vision, be like, all right, well, now I'm here.
We're going to go do some stuff.
Right. I feel like if we start the process with where I'm at, I'll never start.
No, it's
Think
got to
about
be
it.
like a distant horizon. And I tell people when they set goals, like if the goals don't scare you, like aim higher.
Yeah.
All the things, like I said, in my life that I have value are the things that I'm worried about or failure. They all have consequence.
Yeah.
It's, the stuff the stuff that you get for free, the things that you value the least, it's like, wipe the table with that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like when you and I are 75, the consulting businesses and the supplement businesses, we're not going to care about any of those things, And so honestly, man, I'm just super thankful that where I'm at in my life and where you're at in our life, we're not 54, we're not 64, just figuring this out, that coming together and creating relationships and having somebody that's in your life that can give you hope that, hey, man, I'm either going through this same thing that you're going through right now, or I just came out of it, or guess what? I'm about to go into it. Because that's life.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to get away from adversity, but the guys that are real G's, the guys that are really dominating life are looking for it.
Yeah, they dive headlong into it.
Yeah, because they understand what's on the other side of that. But they understand what's on the other side of that, and to revisit Romans again, they rejoice in their suffering because they know the suffering is going to lead to something. And so to me, for my family and what we stand for and what I want to celebrate before I take my last breath has nothing to do with business. It has everything to do with relationships. And that's kind of, I feel like maybe you don't feel like that this way right now, but there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel for the relationship. And I know you know this, but man, I just want to stand in agreement with you that there is a beautiful relationship on the other side of what you and I are going through right now in this process but you'll never get to it unless you're rejoicing in the suffering and seeing the value in what's happening, because divorce happens a lot. And unless you really dig deep on the people that have gone through it, nobody looks at it as a positive thing. But I know for a fact, some of my brothers wouldn't be living their life that they're living right now and wouldn't be the father that they are right now if they didn't get out of a toxic situation to be able to heal themselves, to get awareness to where they need healing, and then to heal themselves, and then to get back into the fight in a way that they're proud of, like showing up with integrity. Not that you don't do this or I don't do this, but we have to be reminded every morning. That's why, like, my cue is when I look in the mirror and I'm brushing my teeth, is to remind myself what I am, not what I'm going to do today. I'm reminding myself in that moment, I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. So there's nothing that I can do today that is going to make me more valuable. There's nothing that I can say today that is going to make me a big piece of crap. I am who I am. I am who God created me to be. Now let me max this model out, because it's different than any other model that he created. But what is my genius? What are my giftings, and how do I develop them? Because I think a lot of people know what their gifts or their talents are, but they don't see value in them.
Yeah.
They don't see how that could impact other people, and they also don't see how they could monetize that to create a great life.
I would agree. Dude, I wanted to take you down to show you the gym.
Yeah. And I know you got to leave at 12:45.
We're going to have time.
How long was this? This is the longest
Oh,
podcast.
we're over 2 hours for sure.
This is the longest one I've ever done. This is awesome.
Yeah, we could go on for more. So
Yeah,
basically,
we could.
we'll just say this is the end of part one. There'll be part two at some point in the near
for
future.
sure.
Where can people find you, though?
Man, I would ask the place where you can probably get to know me the best is going to be my podcast or on social media.
You have to give the name of the podcast.
Instagram story is the spot to catch me. It's at WeatherfordFit on social media. And then if there's anything we talked about about faith today and you guys are just curious about anything, text me. 949-763-5934. Literally any question you have, or maybe you're curious about books that I've read that have maybe helped me to form my perspective or my opinion on my purpose and mission kingdom on this life. Text me, man. And my podcast is the Steve Weatherford Show, where very similar conversations. I'd actually love to have you on here.
I'm game anytime.
Man, before we go, man, I just wanted to honor you, man. You've been, without really knowing it, man, you've been super inspirational, and I'm glad that I'm able to come back into your life in a season where God has worked on me overtime for 3 years. And man, I know for a fact, having brothers that really care about you and your purpose, not just your business, your podcast and all this other, but people that really care about you and your purpose. I'm glad that God brought me back into your life in this season versus a season where you're 13-3.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying it's
Or
a
16-0.
I'm not
What?
saying it's a 3-13 season, but I know for a fact, because I know your heart, I know there's days that it feels like 3-13.
Oh, for sure. If not 0-16.
Right. So just to let you know, man, I'm freaking here for you, man. I know what that pain is like. I haven't been through exactly what you're going through, but the emotions of, not without even getting into it, because we've talked about a lot of them, man. It's there's light at the end of the tunnel, and your best days are ahead of you, man. I really believe that.
I believe that as well.
Yeah.
And let's end on that positive note.
Come on,
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate it.